I am now not muted. I must admit, I am skeptical. Color me skeptical about the claims that they make about how absolutely terrible 50 Shades of Grey is. I have never read a word of the story, but my skepticism is born of the fact that I have read Eye of Argon. I have also read My Immortal. I have seen true horror. And I just can't believe that something printed for mass market, selling millions and millions of copies, can possibly rise to those levels of bad. I have read Twilight. Granted, I have not read all of Twilight. I read half the book when I was in the 7th grade so that I could impress the girl that I wanted to impress. And she was impressed, and we talked about it on the phone, and I never touched the book again. That is the extent to which I'm familiar with Twilight, except for when I read it on stream. And I was truly horrified by the first chapter. But it was horrifying in a comedic way. It was still funny. I felt like I was in on the joke that this had been published. But then, of course, years later, the parody of the parody becomes the punchline. And the punchline is that the joke is on us. These are the books which get published. I have brought my strongest inebriating substances for this work. This is Armageddon mode. And this book may be the death of an editor. That editor being me. I am afraid. I am very afraid. But surely it cannot be as bad as Eye of Argon. There's just no way. There's just no way. So, without further... Bleh. Wow, the alcohol's already kicking in. Just kidding. Seriously though, I've been told that it's this was made by family who brew this kind of stuff in their basement and came with a bevy of precautions, including a proof content that I am not entirely sure is able to be sold in some states, which I may or may not reside in. The good news is it wasn't sold, though. It was gifted, bequeathed. So, as promised, we will dive into the assuredly horrifying 50 Shades of Grey by E.L. James. E.L. James is a woman, which I did not know for several years. And of course, that was the intention behind this pen name, was to mask the gender of the person who had written it. Because, of course, they wanted to sell this to women. And for some reason, I guess, sexy fiction written by women is not going to be purchased by women or something. Like, women don't know what women like. I don't know. I'm not going to pretend to understand what decisions the industry makes and for what reasons. But that is the case. So, you know, I actually do want to read about the author on this one. I want to try to get into the head of this person and just see what could have influenced this. I often skip this because I think that works should stand alone, and I would like to judge the quality of a work just sort of in a vacuum. But in this case, going into it and knowing that it's terrible, I think it fits. We should check out and see what may have motivated this. What psychological conditions could have predicted this? E.L. James is a TV executive wife and mother of two based in West London. British. I did not know they were British. Since early childhood, she dreamt of writing stories that readers would fall in love with, but put those dreams on hold to focus on her family and her career. She finally plucked up the courage to put pen to paper with her first novel, 50 Shades of Grey. I love the like, I'm sorry, I don't have a whole lot of like sympathy for a TV executive. Maybe if I like read more about their background, but that's a person who probably makes a lot of money. And by probably, I mean almost certainly. Currently working on the sequel to 50... No, they're not. That's outdated. What did that say? For Niall, the Master of My Universe? Is that a... It's an interesting name. Maybe it's Neil. Maybe that's just how it's Neil. The Master of My Universe. That's a weird thing to say. Who is that? Oh, that's her husband. Her husband is the Master of her universe. The Master. Perhaps this is the first page to suggest many, many projections moving forward. I'm indebted to the following people. Husband Neil, thank you for tolerating my obsession being a domestic god. A domestic god? This is so weird. This is already so weird. We haven't even started the story. But we went from Master of My Universe to domestic god. Thank goodness he tolerated your obsession. Oof. This is just like dripping with... Not... Is that misogyny? I don't know. I don't know the word for this. It's just weird. It's tropey. Oops. Okay. I don't know what's up with this weird formatting, but it's still readable, so who cares? I'm so afraid. I'm already afraid. The acknowledgements were terrible enough. I scowl with frustration at myself in the mirror. Damn my hair. It just won't behave. And damn Catherine Kavanagh for being ill and subjecting me to this ordeal. I should be studying for my final exams, which are next week, yet here I am trying to brush my hair into submission. I must not sleep with it wet. I must not sleep with it wet. Reciting this mantra several times, I attempt once more to bring it under control with the brush. I roll my eyes in exasperation and gaze at the pale, brown-haired girl with blue eyes too big for her face staring back at me, and give up. My only option is to restrain my wayward hair in a ponytail and hope that I look semi-presentable. Okay, we are off to a terrible start. We literally, the opening scene of this book is the dreaded mirror scene. And the description of our character is that she is pale, brown-haired, with blue eyes too big for her face because the audience wants that, I guess. Maybe, was this written for men? Maybe this was actually written for men. But it's weird because it was like popular among women and it was marketed to women. Kate is my roommate, and she's chosen today of all days to succumb to the flu. A line like that could be okay for a comedic tone for a character, but coming back from reciting this mantra, I must not sleep with it wet, I must not sleep with it wet, just gives us like a whiny melodramatic main character. It just seems like they're focused on the tiniest, dumbest things. She literally just said she should be studying for her final exams next week, and she's brushing her hair. Like, if we're trying to convey a character who's like anxiously obsessive, that could be fine. But I just don't think that that's what this character is going to become, especially not somebody who describes herself so vacuously, like, plainly. She is the most average appearing person, except for having blue eyes. Blue eyes is slightly a rarity. Therefore, she cannot attend the interview she'd arranged to do with some mega-industrialist tycoon I'd never heard of for the student newspaper. So I have been volunteered. I have final exams to cram for, one essay to finish, and I'm supposed to be working this afternoon, but no. Today, I have to drive 165 miles to downtown Seattle in order to meet the enigmatic CEO of Gray Enterprises Holdings Incorporated. As an exceptional entrepreneur and major benefactor of our university, his time is extraordinarily precious. Much more precious than mine, but he has granted Kate an interview. A real coup, she tells me. Damn her extracurricular activities. Kate is huddled on the couch in the living room. Anna, I'm sorry. It took me 9 months to get this interview. It'll take another 6 to reschedule, and we'll both have graduated by then. As the editor, I can't blow this off. Please. Kate begs me in her rasping, sore throat voice. How does she do it? Even ill, she looks... This is impressive. There's a word in here that I would not have otherwise known. Let's see. Attractively boyish. Gammon. Or gammon. Attractively boyish. Huh. Even ill, she looks gammon and gorgeous, strawberry blonde hair in place and green eyes bright, although now red-rimmed and runny. I ignore my pang of unwelcome sympathy. I feel like this somehow managed to find every single insidious adjective there is. Like every single one of the worst adjectives there are. Gammon is actually not like a terrible adjective, but somehow next to strawberry blonde hair and green eyes bright, red-rimmed and runny. Of course I'll go, Kate. You should get back to bed. Would you like some NyQuil or Tylenol? NyQuil, please. Here are the questions in my mini disc recorder. Just press record here. Make notes, I'll transcribe it all. I know nothing about him, I murmur, trying and failing to suppress my rising panic. The questions will see you through. Go. It's a long drive. I don't want you to be late. Okay, I'm going. Get back to bed. I made you some soup to heat up later. I stare at her fondly. Only for you, Kate, would I do this. She's making it sound like this is like a major sacrifice. She's just like conducting an interview with a billionaire. Like maybe this is like it's a pretty big ask, but like this is a very melodramatic. It's very heavy-handed. This isn't necessary. We already know that the character is putting in a lot of work into this, right? Like we already know that this is a big barrier for the main character to be crossing, and it's a big ask for her friend to make of her, and yet she's like dragging this out as though like her best friend asked her to like, can you spare your life for me? Only for you, Kate, would I do this. Commenting generally on this opening scene, it's not the worst setup. Okay, we essentially how this works in a book like this, right? The main inciting event of the plot is going to be the encounter between Anna, the main character, and Christian Grey, the billionaire. Yes, I know the plot because I have watched trailers for the movie, and I've mostly watched spoofs and like comedic takes on the trailers for the movie, like the honest trailers and that kind of stuff. So I do know the characters. Anna, our main character, in order for this plot to move forward, because the essential plot itself is really just the relationship between Anna and Christian as it develops, right? And that's totally fine. That can be a totally fine plot idea, especially if this relationship is particularly dynamic or interesting. This probably won't be, but that's fine. We'll get to that. We'll critique that when that stone presents itself to us. But at the moment, if we're looking at this plot from a purely functionalist perspective, we have our inciting event is going to be when Anna and Christian meet, especially because of the sort of darker or more twisted or more, BDSM or whatever it is, nature of the relationship between Christian and Anna. We need them to be strange from the beginning. We need them to have like a pretty like jarring first interaction in order to really spur the, you know, the intrigue of Mr. Grey and the naive and gullible innocence of Anna. Totally fine. It's essentially the Red Riding Hood setup. And in order to have the Red Riding Hood setup, you first need to establish a reason why Red Riding Hood encounters the wolf. Why does she encounter the wolf? Well, because she has to go through the forest. Why does she have to go through the forest? Because she has to bring food to her ailing grandmother. So in order to do that, she has to get through the forest, and in the forest is where the wolf is, and the wolf will encounter her. So if we have a billionaire, and we have the naive, innocent Anna, then the way that we make them meet is by forcing them into some situation together. And this, for chapter 1, does it. I will give kudos to this chapter 1 for getting us right to the meat of the plot. It really doesn't hold back. First thing it's going to do is it's going to push our main characters together, Anna and Christian. It's setting everything up. And then the second thing that it's doing, and somewhat, I was going to say somewhat effectively, but then I actually lost my train of thought about the second thing that it's doing. The second thing that it's doing is it's allowing our character to remain naive. An investigative journalist, or just any kind of journalist, can't be as naive as we want a character. I say we, and by we, I would mean me and the author, of course, if I was working one-on-one with them over like developing the story. We can't have a character as naive as Anna, who is at the same time a journalist or somebody who would be conducting an interview, right? That is a job which negates naivety. You can't be naive and a journalist. You're not going to be good at your job. Journalists have to follow the lines of questioning. So far, we actually have a fairly decent setup insofar as we're maintaining the characterization of Anna that we want. We want her to be sort of innocent, doe-like, and we are thrusting our two characters into direct collision, Anna and Christian Grey, in some situation neither of them can prevent, which is going to accelerate our plot development, the meat of the plot development. So it is effective in that one respect. It's not well written. There's a lot of like smaller things, especially these descriptions. When I read descriptions like these as an editor, like, all I can think to myself is, why is this here? Now, I know why a lot of these descriptions are here. These descriptions are here in order to make up for the fact that this writing is bland AF and essentially trying to appeal to the broadest audience possible. The reason that she has brown hair and blue eyes is because blue eyes are universally regarded as, you know, beautiful or whatever. And she's brown haired because that is the most common hair color for women. In order to appeal to the broadest possible audience, we've made her attractive. She's got large eyes. People tend to like large eyes, but we haven't actually had to name any specific features that people would actually like about her. We don't get anything about her small button nose or about her, although she probably has one. That's also something that would probably be fairly common if you're trying to make her appeal, especially to men. But we don't have anything about, you know, like the mole on her left cheek that she's self-conscious about, or the small scar under her ear, right? We don't have anything that actually would make her unique. We don't have anything that would make her distinctive among a cast of female leads of romance novels. Nothing makes her distinctive, and that is the point. That's why it's bad. It's bad because there is nothing to make this stand out. And so when we read a description like, I attempt once more to bring it under control with the brush, I roll my eyes in exasperation and gaze at the pale, brown-haired girl with blue eyes too big for her face staring back up at me, and give up. My only option is to restrain my wayward hair in a ponytail and hope that I look semi-presentable. That is a pointless description. Because if your character looks average, if they look like everybody else, you don't need to describe it. The reader will picture average features. If you say that you have, you know, she encountered a man, and you don't provide any description of a man, people get it. People just go, oh, she encountered a vaguely average man. That can be enough. That can be enough for a side character if it's she encountered the man. It could even be enough in a story like The Stranger, right? Or I mean, you don't need to describe features of the main character. You don't need to describe features of the secondary characters. It can be useful if you've got some kind of particular effect. If you're describing scars, because it's important how they got them, or because it conveys some sense of ruggedness or some part of the character's like actual personality. If it's important in the shaping of that character, if it's something that they're self-conscious about, if it's something that other people notice about them, there should be unique things about characters, and we should always be focusing the lens on that, because that's what actual human eyes do. Human eyes focus on the parts of humans that are distinctive, that are original, that are interesting. You don't look at a crowd of 100 people and think, oh, wow, look at all of the people with brown hair. No, you look at a crowd of people and you think, wow, look at that guy with the weird hat. So this is just, yeah, it's pretty insipid. The descriptions especially, like I would cut them entirely. Just the dialogue would be enough for the story to move forward. And if I was editing this, we'd be doing a whole lot of work. But at the very simplest level, the first thing I would do is I would just cut every single paragraph of descriptions. They are not necessary. They're not doing anything to this. And even the actions aren't that important. They're not even like setting the scene. The most frustrating part about these actions to me is how quickly they get dropped. Like, she's trying to brush her hair, right? She's trying to brush her hair in this paragraph. She's, and then she gives up and she can only restrain it in a ponytail. And then all of a sudden we get to her background information over here, but like none of this is carried into the next part. We don't get the, it just doesn't feel very fluid. It's hard to describe in a very like concrete sense, but if I'm thinking of just very loose examples, she could set the hairbrush down in the kitchen. She could walk back out and her hair could still be dripping on the floor. There could be little things that could impose a kind of fluidity between these like scenic movements as she's moving from the bathroom to the kitchen, out to her friend in the living room. Like there are ways that we can trail along the scene so that it actually feels like a human being moving in a 3D environment instead of just a like 2D picture presentation of somebody in front of a mirror with big doe eyes and slightly damp hair that they're finding very difficult to tame for some reason. Of course I'll go, Kate. You should get back to bed. Would you like some NyQuil or Tylenol? NyQuil, please. Here are the questions in my mini disc recorder. Just press record here. Make notes. I'll transcribe it all. I know nothing about him, I murmur, trying and failing to suppress my rising panic. The questions will see you through. Go. It's a long drive. I don't want you to be late. Okay, I'm going. Get back to bed. I made you some soup to heat up later. I stare at her fondly. This is like, if you stare at somebody fondly also, like this is something that we could use more detail on. This is something where a detail would actually make it convincing that she was staring at somebody fondly. Because you say, I'm staring at her fondly, or I stared at her fondly, or what. There is no fondness in the word fondly. This is a case of the show don't tell. And I don't like that, like, I really hate that phrase. But it is the case that we should be engaging the reader with action. Oh, thank you for hosting, Satoru. Appreciate it. Only for you, Kate, would I do this. I will. Good luck. And Anna, as usual, you're my lifesaver. Gathering my satchel, I smile wryly at her, then head out the door to the car. I cannot believe I have let Kate talk me into this, but then Kate can talk anyone into anything. She'll make an exceptional journalist. She's articulate, strong, persuasive, argumentative, beautiful, and she's my dearest, dearest friend. This is so stupidly sappy. People don't talk about their friends. Hey, how's it going, Dandelion Queen? People don't talk about their friends like that. Who talks about their friends that fondly? Like, I have never, like, I have dear friends. I have never once thought, they are my dearest, dearest friend. That's like the kind of sentiment you would have if you're like maybe 90. Or if you're just the sappiest, most like friendship romantic person on the planet. Dearest, dearest, two dearests? A word that people don't use at all ever, and she's using it twice. The roads are clear as I set off from Vancouver, Washington, toward Portland and the I-5. It's early, and I don't have to be in Seattle until 2 this afternoon. Fortunately, Kate's lent me her sporty Mercedes CLK. Fortunately? Why is that fortunately? I'm not sure Wanda, my old VW Beetle, would make the journey in time. Okay. Speed, I guess, so you can speed on the road. Oh, the Merc is a fun drive, and the miles slip away as I floor the pedal to the metal. We've got a weird contrast we're setting up for the character. I don't know if this is going to be bad. I'm confident it will be bad, but I don't know for 100% that it's going to be bad. We have a little bit of a glimpse of maybe real characterization, or maybe just the author sitting in for this character in this one scene. The character seems to have a little bit of like a rebel streak here, right? Oh, the Merc is a fun drive, and the miles slip by as I floor the pedal to the metal. When before she was the big blue doe-eyed girl in the mirror, as she was like struggling with her wet hair. So like, if this actually is a feature of characterization, if this gets fleshed out, which it won't, because I'm very confident that it won't, but that's fine. If that gets fleshed out, that could be an interesting dynamic to like later tease out of the character as part of the development between her and this more oppressive Christian Grey. Or it can be the sort of contrast to her own like self-development as she like takes this banner of freedom after Christian Grey maybe sexually liberates her. Again, in a version of this that would be better written. Yeah, people who name their cars, I can kind of. Wanda's a weird one. I feel like I know some people who name their cars and they have to choose like pretty outrageous names. Like I had a friend who had like a very dramatically like burgundy old like 1998 Mercedes that they had named Octavian. And I was like, I'm not normally a fan of naming cars, but if I had a car and I could name it Octavian, that's a pretty stellar name. Wanda's I can't, I'm not going to disparage the name Wanda. It's a perfectly fine name, but it's a weird name for a car. It's also it's a weird name for someone to name a car. It's not actually that weird a name for a car even. But for someone to look at their Beetle and go, she's a Wanda. That's a person I don't understand. My destination is the headquarters of Mr. Grey's global enterprise. It's a huge 20-story office building, all curved glass and steel, an architect's utilitarian fantasy with Grey House written discreetly in steel over the glass front doors. It's 1:45 when I arrive, greatly relieved that I'm not late as I walk into the enormous and frankly intimidating glass, steel, and white sandstone lobby. Enormous and frankly intimidating. I really don't want to like be reading too into the Freudian things here. I feel like it's just going to be way too easy. We're going to be stopping every other paragraph. But if she walks into his skyscraper and immediately has, yeah, because it's a 20-story office with curved glass and steel, so it's a bit curved. A utilitarian fantasy. This is all sexual language on purpose. Absolutely on purpose. None of the only weird part is the glass, steel, and white. Those don't really seem like particularly phallic colors, but all of this is very phallic. Behind the solid sandstone desk, a very attractive, groomed, blonde young woman smiles pleasantly at me. She's wearing the sharpest charcoal suit jacket and white shirt I've ever seen. She looks immaculate. I don't think... People don't do that. People don't look at other people. I mean, you've got to really make a pretty strong impression for people to be like, you look immaculate. That's a strong reaction to have at the receptionist. Immaculate. I haven't used that word since I was like Christian. Like immaculate conception. It has like a weirdly religious connotation. This whole thing is written weird. It's like it's the strangest mix of like phallic, religious, and modern industrial aesthetic imagery. I feel like this is what happens when we get like, oh, it's just capitalism plus like, it's like capitalism plus mass market paperbacks. Never mind, this is actually the entirely predictable conclusion of the entire publishing industry. This is the future of publishing. I'm calling it. It's the present of publishing, at least for now. It's nearly the present. I know it's, you know, its time has passed and whatnot. I'm here to see Mr. Gray. Anastasia Steele for Catherine Kavanaugh. Excuse me one moment, Miss Steele. She arches her eyebrow slightly as I stand self-consciously before her. What does that mean? How do you stand self-consciously? You're just self-conscious while you're standing. Adverbs modify the verb. Like, this isn't like a... Like this is what they do. So like if you are self-conscious, I'm self-conscious as I stand beside her. That's fine. You can be self-conscious. You could self-consciously adjust the collar of your shirt because you've got maybe a hickey on your neck, or maybe you've got a bad scar. You could self-consciously fix your hair discreetly in the reflective surface of the metal table. But you can't stand self-consciously. That's just standing. This is... What did the editors just like fall asleep on the job? They just didn't care, actually. They just didn't care. That's gotta be it. I mean, if I was reading this, if some agent pushed this onto the publisher's desk and the publisher said, okay, we must edit this now, pass it to our in-house editing team, and I was the editor on that team, I would quit. I don't care how many figures my salary is. I could be making 8 figures at that job and I would realize that I had completely sold my soul to whatever art has been degraded into. Oh my goodness, this is horrifying. So they just didn't care. They just didn't care when they were editing this. They just right over their eyes. Include this. Go ahead and do this. Include this in your story. See if your editor catches it. If your editor doesn't say anything, they're not good at the job. No, I'm just kidding. That's too strong. They might not have noticed. Or maybe they just don't care. Watch, karma's going to be a bitch and somebody's going to do that to me. I'm beginning to wish I'd borrowed one of Kate's formal blazers rather than wear my navy blue jacket. I've made an effort and worn my one and only skirt, my sensible brown knee-length boots, and a blue sweater. For me, this is smart. Oh, I bet. Okay. Oh, I gotta turn down the snark. For me, this is smart. I tuck one of the escaped tendrils of my... Tendrils? I tuck one of the escaped tendrils in my hair behind my ear as I pretend she doesn't intimidate me. Why is she constantly being intimidated by things? I get that we're trying to, like, make her, like, the doe-eyed, innocent, oh, look at me, I'm just an innocent, like, baby girl thing that men would swoon over or something. And all women want to be me. But, like, you shouldn't be intimidated by every single thing in this room. She's intimidated first by the size of the building. She's intimidated by... I mean, she's already intimidated by the fact that she has to go and interview Christian Grey. And now she's intimidated by the receptionist. Again, it would be totally fine if we were trying to set up a character who just was anxious and ruminated. That doesn't seem to be what we're doing here. Instead, what it is we're setting up a character who's just pandering to the I don't know, male id. Oh, this is... Tendrils. What a weird word to put there. That's bizarre. I tuck one of the escaped tendrils. You don't want people thinking of tendrils in the middle of this? We haven't set any of... Like, this is a word that, like, H.P. Lovecraft would throw in there to give you this sense of, like, unease, as the main character is referring to their own hair as tendrils, and they're in the middle of this, you know, oblique, dark setting of moss falling off the wall and Nyarlathotep in the corner reading Agamemnon's necromancy book or whatever, like Necronomicon. There we go. Like, tendrils, that's so bizarre. I immediately thought when she said I tuck one of the escaped tendrils. First of all, I thought I must have misread the word coattails, so I reread the word and realized. And then secondly, I immediately thought tentacle. I thought tentacle. Hair is not tendrils. Strands. Hair is strands. It is locks. It can be a bunch. But unless you're really going for some Lovecraftian horror vibes, it shouldn't be tendrils. Miss Kavanaugh is expected. Please sign here, Miss Steele. You'll want the last elevator on the right. Press for the 20th floor. She smiles kindly at me, amused, no doubt, as I sign in. Why is that no doubt? What is she amused by? Again, this makes the character seem a bit self-important. She thinks that, like, other people are noticing her. A receptionist is not going to be amused at you. In fact, they're most likely to be bored by you because they're doing their job, processing a visitor. The lack of attention to detail in, like, every single part of this, I mean, it's probably going to keep us, like, stopping at every paragraph, but, like, it's striking. It's striking that this wasn't edited, thought through, read twice. She hands me a security pass that has visitor very firmly stamped on the front. I can't help my smirk. Surely it's obvious that I'm just visiting. I don't fit in here at all. Nothing changes, I inwardly sigh. That's an inward sigh. It's frightening. If you inhale while you sigh, it just sounds like you're choking. Like you're struggling to breathe. Nothing changes. So the thing is, if it was just one of these things happening, like, I would brush over it. But the fact that it happens in every paragraph, I would never be like this rough on... I wouldn't be this rough on anything else. I don't know. Oh my goodness. Nothing changes, I inwardly sigh. Thanking her, I walk over to the bank of elevators past the two security men who are both far more smartly dressed than I am in their well-cut black suits. She has noticed the most mundane details about this place. It has glass and metal. It's a skyscraper. The people inside are attractive and blonde, and the men wear suits. These are like the observations of an 8-year-old. I legitimately feel a little bit bad. A little bit. About how terrible I think this is. Because on that first page she put that writing a book was her dream. But I also really don't completely believe that. Because if it was her dream and she was a TV executive and she was probably extremely wealthy, she probably could have published a book a lot sooner. And you know what? She published a book. And more power to her. Cheers to you, E.L. James. The elevator whisks me with terminal velocity to the 20th floor. Down? Terminal velocity. That doesn't even mean anything. Terminal velocity doesn't go up. Terminal velocity is the maximum velocity that an object will reach on its downward trajectory due to gravity. Elevators can't travel upward. They could travel upward at terminal velocity if they traveled upward at the exact speed that their maximum downward trajectory from gravity would deliver. That's a very, very specific thing. The doors slide open, and I'm in another large lobby. Again, all glass, steel, and white sandstone. Why describe it then? It's the same. Just say it's the same. It looked the same as the rest of the building. We all know what we're picturing. I'm confronted by another desk of sandstone and another young blonde woman dressed impeccably in black and white who rises to greet me. It's actually the same one. It's just the same one. We've copied and pasted. It's the same woman. She's a twin. It's part of a conspiracy. John Oliver's behind it. Miss Steele, could you wait here, please? She points to a seated area of white leather chairs. I actually, I can't get over how terribly we've characterized these people. There are no distinguishing features of any of these characters. These are all completely blank slates. They're all white people, which is I don't know why that's the most annoying feature to me, is that they're all white people. There's no diversity in this world, and it's set in America. She has met 4 people. 5 people. I don't know. Ugh. I guess maybe that's not the worst thing. It's one of them, though. This whole thing is terrible. Okay. Reserving judgment. Behind the leather chairs is a spacious glass-walled meeting room with an equally spacious dark wood table and at least 20 matching chairs around it. Beyond that, there is a floor-to-ceiling window with a view of the Seattle skyline that looks out through the city toward the Sound. It's a stunning vista, and I'm momentarily paralyzed by the view. Wow. Wow. What happened to the music? Music stopped. That was weird. Keep that going. Okay, if we're going to sit here and describe the Seattle skyline, we should this is a person who lives in Seattle. Right? She lives in Seattle, I'm pretty sure. Or no, maybe she lives in Vancouver. Point is, you don't just describe it as a stunning vista. Stun the reader. The character being stunned is not remarkable to the reader. Sure, we can fill in the blanks and just magically picture something which would stun us. But that's not like the point of writing. If the point of writing was me to tell you, picture just a beautiful thing. Just picture the most beautiful thing you've ever seen, and then know that the thing that I want you to picture is actually more beautiful than that. If writing were like that easy, we wouldn't need publishers. Everybody would be a bard. Maybe we don't need publishers. Actually, I'm fairly amenable to that argument. Maybe everybody is a bard. Everybody has a story to tell. Nope, clearly not. I sit down, fish the questions from my satchel, and go through them. Don't read this out loud, they might hear you. Who is they? The other, oh, the publishers. Oh. Oh, goodness. Don't worry, there's no, that stuff, that kind of stuff is way later in the book. The stuff that you can't read in front of your family. So it'll be, well, don't worry, I'll pause before we get to that point, and I'll save that for expressly the explicit stream, where I'm going to be like, now we're getting into the meat. Just like Anna. I sit down, fish the questions from my satchel, and go through them, inwardly cursing Kate for not providing me with a brief biography. I know nothing about this man I'm about to interview. He could be 90 or he could be 30. She was in the lobby. She could have Googled him on her phone. She had minutes to do that. When was this published? When was this published? I will withhold judgment if this was published. I already know it wasn't, but I'm just gonna be generous. 2006. People had smartphones. Maybe she didn't. Maybe. If she pulls out a single smartphone during the course of this story, I don't have to say it. Judgment will be provided. As strong as this is, which I think it's about 100 proof, still not strong enough. I can feel the burn through like my, I don't know, I was going to say like my brachials or something. I don't know body parts. I have to look them up every time when I write. The uncertainty is galling and my nerves resurface, making me fidget. I've never been comfortable with one-on-one interviews, preferring the anonymity of a group discussion where I can sit inconspicuously at the back of the room. To be honest, I prefer my own company, reading a classic British novel curled up in a chair in the campus library, not sitting twitching nervously in a colossal glass and stone edifice. This isn't this is not the worst part of it. This is actually decent. I will say it. This is actually not bad. This characterizes our character somewhat. The uncertainty is galling and my nerves resurface, making me fidget. Now, that could be put more actively. I hate making me fidget because that's very, very passive. We don't want things to be making the character do things. We want the character to be doing things. Now, to be fair, we may be going for an effect here by making it so that the character's anxiety is driving the situation and the character is kind of a passenger to their anxiety. That's actually a real experience had by people of anxiety, that they often feel like their autonomy, their own ability to control their actions or to be in control of a situation is reduced and the anxiety is taking hold. And that could be what's happening here. I've never been comfortable with one-on-one interviews. That's a weird sentence to me because I'm pretty sure our main character isn't a journalist. If she is a journalist, whole new can of worms. But I'm pretty sure she's not a journalist. And preferring the anonymity of a group discussion where I can sit inconspicuously at the back of the room. Like, who says I've never been comfortable with one-on-one interviews? Like how many of us encounter a situation in which we must conduct a one-on-one interview. Managers, news people, politicians, I think that's it. I think that's all of them. She is none of those. So why does she make it sound like this is something she doesn't like, that a situation that she would expect to encounter? It's something that every single time it's come up in my life, I've been uncomfortable. I've never been comfortable with them. As opposed to just saying this one-on-one interview is making me nervous. I didn't know how to prepare for something like this. I preferred the anonymity of a group discussion where I could sit inconspicuously at the back of the room. To be honest, I prefer my own company, reading a classic British novel curled up in a chair in the campus library. Now, if I was British, which the author of this was British, is British, probably continues to be British. Oh, actually, wait a minute. This is set in America. So that's actually, no, this is good. I will say that it's good that she likes British novels because she's American. If she was British, I would say she should like American novels. And the reason that you would want it to be different is so that she has something unique about her. It's not that unique. This is indeed a very, very relatable and common trait. People like novels, and people may like novels from a specific area. But it is something that people can relate to. Fair. And to like a specific category of novel is a normal human thing to do. It is good when our characters can be specific. That makes them more human. Humans are like, they have specific preferences. And she chose a specific place, curled up in a chair in the campus library. Like, I would have liked something a little bit more specific, but whatever. This is actually fairly decent. This gives us a picture of this character, and it makes it builds some tension for this setting. We feel a little bit of what she's feeling, this anxiety, because of how much she'd like to in a public setting. She is inside this building with Christian Grey, like somewhere else. They might roll their eyes at themselves if they are alone at home, like, I don't know, in some kind of self-dialogue or something. Very unlikely to do this in this setting. This seems weird to me. People don't have this kind of ongoing dialogue with themselves, especially in a stressful situation. I don't think that's typical. Now, maybe that's a way we can characterize her anxiety, maybe, but I'm just so not inclined to be super, super charitable with this because already we've hit so many bad starts. Okay. Get a grip, Steele. Judging from the building, which is too clinical and modern, I guess Grey is in his 40s, fit, tanned, and fair-haired to match the rest of the personnel. What? How do you guess someone's age from what the building that they almost certainly did not build looks like? He didn't build this. He's not an architect. He didn't design this building. He's just a CEO in a building that other people built, other people designed, and he probably just bought it. He probably didn't even commission it to be built. This building has as much reflection on him as a suburban house has on the family that lives it. You can't guess the race of a person from knowing the fact that they live in a suburban house. Knowing their zip code, you can probably get pretty close with statistical accuracy, unfortunately. But just knowing what kind of house they are in, the fact that this building has steel and glass like most skyscrapers, you cannot guess that the CEO is in his 40s. That's ridiculous. And to further guess then that he is fit, tanned, and fair-haired, this is the beginning of her sexual fantasy. She is beginning to fantasize. This is a fantasy to match the rest of the personnel. All that says is that he is extremely discriminatory in his hiring practices. That is a Title X investigation waiting to happen. Another elegant, flawlessly dressed blonde, flawlessly dressed, flawless. They're all flawlessly dressed. Nobody has a bad dress day in this building. It's just not possible. It's not even like you can't conceive of the possibility. It's not just what's taking me out of this is not just that they're all well dressed. I would expect them all to be well dressed. What's taking me out of this is that the character continues to think that this is something remarkable that she should be mentioning to us, and like it's continuing to register in her mind. Every time somebody walks in this place with a suit, she's like, oh my God, they're also wearing a suit. I've never seen so many suits before. Wow, where do they get all these suits from? Where's the suit store that all these people are walking out of? Did they get them today? These people look amazing. Oh my God, are they models? People don't do that. When you walk into a building and you see the first like 3 or 4 people all wearing suits, you're like, wow, people here. I am underdressed. I am underdressed. Okay, I'm gonna push past it. Trying not to think about the fact that I'm underdressed. Another person walks in with a suit, you're not gonna say anything. You're not gonna think it. Nothing is going to be like, this is regular now. This has become regular. You have become accustomed to the stimulus of a new person walking in wearing a black suit. And the fact is, none of them are even wearing anything remarkable in their suits. It's literally just they're all wearing suits. Elegant, flawlessly dressed blonde comes out of the door to the right. What is it with all the immaculate blondes? Just to be clear, that wasn't me. That's written in the book. What is it with all the immaculate blondes? She is commenting on her own ridiculously unrealistic setting that she chose to write. She chose this. And she is now trying to pretend as though this is a normal observation to be having. It's like Stepford here. Taking a breath, I stand up. Miss Steele? The latest blonde asks. You know, I will give her credit. I will give the author enormous credit because she has found a way to make a novel written by a woman sound like it was certainly written by a man. The latest blonde asks. Quite a misogynistic man. That's impressive. You really have to get inside like a mindset there. Like you have to get into character when you sit down to write. How would a man describe the next woman who walks through the door? The latest blonde. Updated version. Hair more platinum than ever. Yes. I croak and clear my throat. Yes. There. That sounded more confident. Mr. Gray will see you in a moment. May I take your jacket? Oh, please. I struggle out of the jacket. That's pretty funny, actually. This is pretty funny. It's funny because it shows how inept our character is in the middle of us realizing how inept the author is. Have you been offered any refreshment? No. Oh dear. Is blonde number 1 in trouble? They're numbered. They're numbered. Oh my God, she continues this. This isn't a one-time joke. We've got blonde number 1 and blonde number 2. It's like thing 1 and thing 2 from... Oh my God, we have entered Dr. Seuss levels of self-parody. I'm impressed. I'm impressed. This may rival Eye of Argon for being undisputedly the worst written novel I've ever read. It is so far absolutely winning worst written published novel I've ever read. It was pretty close to Twilight at first, until she numbered the blondes. Leagues below Twilight here. This is the parody of bad writing in Twilight, satirizing itself. No. Oh dear, is blonde number 1 in trouble? Blonde number 2 frowns and looks at the young woman at the desk. Would you like tea, coffee, water? She asks, turning her attention back to me. By the way, we've been given 0 distinctive qualities between blonde number 1 and blonde number 2. Again, her own names for these characters. And like in our minds, what are we to picture? We are literally to picture clones. It's like we're in the middle of Star Wars, and instead of stormtroopers, it's just indistinguishable blondes. That is the workplace that he has set up, a place that is ripe for a Title IX investigation. A glass of water. Thank you, I murmur. Too many dialogue tags. I am going to say, just as in a normal editing capacity, this is something that I see all the time. And actually, it's something that I am guilty of often in my first drafts. But I've been lately a lot better about. This is something that people really struggle with. And they struggle with because when we're writing the dialogue, we want to make sure we know that the reader is going to know who's talking. We don't... Like, we want to give them benefit of the doubt. We want to give the reader benefit of the doubt that they're going to know, like, how the exchange of dialogue is going on, right? Like, the pattern that gets established. But at the same time, we have a lot of doubt. Like, what if they miss something? And what if they think by the end of this exchange that actually this character was saying these things? Or maybe they're not able to, like, piece together whose parts of the conversation there are. And so we add more dialogue tags than necessary. Inevitably, almost every time. Unless you're Ernest Hemingway, in which case you add far fewer dialogue tags than necessary. Far fewer. At times approaching 0 dialogue tags in an exchange of dialogue in which the first character who speaks, you are not sure who they are. And that's annoying. But this is not that case. This is the case where we have too many dialogue tags. Number 1, you only want to have 2 dialogue tags in your book, except for a very, very, very sparse peppering. Like spice, just a little bit of, just a little bit of chili powder, not too much. You add too much and all of a sudden the dish is way too spicy. You want just the right amount, very, very small touch of spicy. And we're talking small touch of spicy for the whitest customer you've ever had in this place. We are talking, we're not talking like, levels of any other, like South American spicy, far too spicy. We are talking mildest of the mild of salsas here. Of other dialogue tags. You can have said and asks. Those are the big 2. Those are the big 2 you're allowed to have. Occasionally, if you've already used said and you've already used asks, and maybe you have like a dialogue scene with like 3 different people interspersing dialogue, and so like you really want to change, you just got to change up one little thing over here and just so everything flows a little bit better and it feels a little less repetitive, fine. You can also use the word replied. Asks, said, replied. Those are fine. Outside of that, you got to be really careful. The only ones you should be doing should indicate volume, emphasis, or importance. You can say shouted, because that indicates volume in a very important way. You don't say something like said loudly. I mean, you could say said loudly, right? Somebody's just sort of speaking above their normal volume, but that's what that conveys. If I say he said it loudly, people are like, oh, he said it loudly, like that. But if you're talking about like something, if they're shouting, you want to be clear that they're shouting. They're trying to yell to somebody across like the entire room. You can have shouted. You can have whispered. Whispered is a great one. That's lower volume. Murmur. Mm-mm. 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 Nope. No murmurs. I heard murmurs. Fine. There were murmurs in the back of the car. Fine. Demurred. Demurred is a good one. Does not mean murmur. But it is a good word, and I do encourage you to throw it around. But usually it doesn't accompany dialogue. A glass hurries to a door on the other side of the foyer. My apologies, Miss Steele. Olivia is our new intern. Please be seated. Mr. Gray will be another 5 minutes. Olivia returns with a glass of iced water. Okay, I'm annoyed. I'm annoyed at this description of Olivia. And the reason that I'm incredibly annoyed at this description of Olivia is because we have been given no indication that Olivia is otherwise inept at her job or otherwise a new intern. She has not behaved like a new intern. She has not already messed up at something. She did not know where the visitor's pass is. A thing that a normal intern absolutely would fuck up. Interns are not usually super competent at their jobs or super confident in their presentation at their capacity in their jobs. So often, even if they are good at their jobs, they're going to act like they're not very confident in their jobs. And this person had the confidence, apparently, of a supermodel. So much so that our main character was intimidated by this intern of a receptionist, who she also called Blonde Number 1 or Blonde Number 2. This whole inconsistency here. If our main character is someone who is intimidated by an intern, first of all, our intern shouldn't have been like, if we're going to reveal that they're an intern and like she should have asked you if you want like a glass of water, like, why was she so otherwise presenting like she was so good at her job? Like, why was this character, why was our main character not observant enough to realize, like this person should have been slightly frazzled and looked like she was new on the job or whatever? This could have been actually a really excellent place for our main character to be able to have somebody that she can, she can feel a little bit confident over. And we can get just a little bit of a side of her character. Maybe, for instance, Anna could have come up to she could have come up to Olivia, who is the intern person, and she could have come up to her, and she sees Olivia, she's a little bit frazzled, she's like, oh, I'm sorry, I can't seem to find, she has to check 3 different drawers, because she can't seem to find the visitor's passes, but she eventually finds them, hands it on the counter, and Anna puts it on, and then Anna leans in and says, hey, I noticed you're a bit new here, what's Mr. Gray like? I'm about to have an interview with him, and I don't know what the best way to go about this is. And then maybe our intern can either hype us up or like level us down. Our intern could be like, oh, Mr. Gray is just the kindest, best boss ever. Don't even worry about it. And then maybe he intimidates the crap out of her in the interview, right? That could set us up for a really interesting dynamic where we're like, but we were told that he would be really nice. Is he really nice to the interns? Maybe he's like, ooh, maybe he's actually creepy. Maybe he's creepy, like a creepy kind of boss who like wants to sleep with the interns. That's really bad. But then he was mean to this reporter person, right? Because he's going to be sort of antagonistic. Or we could do the opposite as well. We could even have the intern being like, oh, Mr. Gray, I don't really want to talk about him, but I'm not supposed to talk to reporters, so, but you can sit right there, please. Do you need any water? That could have been like, and then she meets Mr. Gray, and Mr. Gray is nothing but the most benevolent, magnanimous person. And that would have been really interesting. Why does the intern fear Mr. Gray so much? And then he seems to be really nice. Oh, he's probably acting for the reporter. Right? Why? What does he have to hide, etc. That can build up the intrigue for these characters and keep the reader engaged. Of course, in selling this novel to people, they did not care if the reader was engaged, because all they cared about was making money off of a book that they knew would sell to romance readers who wanted a little bit of something spicy. This thing is like dripping wet. I think I must have put too much ice in it. I have a coaster over here that's just like a giant puddle. Olivia returns with a glass of iced water. So this book, by the way, I haven't pointed out, this book is told in the present tense. And that's pretty fitting especially for, so it's thought. There's no evidence that actually supports this, but it is anecdotally believed by people in the industry that the present tense makes a story feel more immediate. It makes you feel more involved and engaged, like at the outset from the inciting actions. But it also has a bit of a modern feel. The custom for stories for the longest time was to tell them in past tense, because naturally we usually talk about stories as if they are past events. The whole thing already happened, and we are now relating it to you in writing. It's not a thing that is happening at the same time as we are writing about it, because that would be ridiculous. What is this, the Marvel Universe? So we had a very long custom of people writing these things in the past tense, and then present tense came about. In present tense, it was believed was something that would help stories feel more immediate and engaging for an audience as they're sort of taken in the moment to events. And this is an effective place for present tense to be used because this is a romance novel, or that's the category that it's placed in, the genre that it's placed in. That's not to say anything about the quality of the romance within it. It is, in name only, a romance novel. And for that, and a sense of immediacy, assuming that the theory is correct as to whether or not like readers actually engage with a work on that like deep of a level, that sense of immediacy is going to help our spicy scenes, our scenes of intimacy and action and sexy things feel more immediate. They'll feel more engaging because they'll be like things that we're in, like, oh, he takes off her shirt. Oh, he's doing it now. Oh, he takes off her shoes. Right now, I'm watching him do that in this moment. It's not a thing that already happened. Now, I don't think that readers actually engage with works on that level, but it can be something that can make a work sort of pass by a little bit more, maybe. It can definitely be simpler to write because you don't have to worry about the past tense conundrum about, like, do I use past or perfect past or past progressive for certain actions if I want to convey, like, different points in time. It's very clear where the dividing line between present and past is in a novel that is told in present tense. He sits on the chair, and he told her about how he sat on the chair yesterday. How does my first chapter fare when compared to this? Oh, your first chapter was... we are talking absolutely different leagues here, because of two things. Number one, and different leagues being yours is leagues above. And for two things. Number one, actually, a lot more than two things. I'm not going to number them before I list them. Number one, the quality of your writing. You have absolutely beautiful prose. Your descriptions are original and they're notable. They're things that, like, when characters were describing things, if you remember, I don't think I commented once on, like, this isn't like this. Who would describe something like this, or the descriptions in your work are stellar, and they are focused on specific pieces of, like, things that would be notable to characters, things that would actually, that connect with them, things that make them feel human. The things that she's describing here are like sandstone desk, glass windows, a skyline of skyscrapers, and metal. There's metal everywhere. And blondes. Blonde number 1 and blonde number 2 and blonde number 3. So our descriptions here are so incredibly generic that this story, you could rewrite this entire story with a find and replace in about 4 minutes and create something that would pass the 80% non-plagiarism barrier that the Supreme Court imposes for originality of works. As in, I could republish this using command and replace in about 5 minutes and be able to publish a new book by doing almost nothing to the underlying plot or story. And that's because it's so generic. Now, your prose has poetic language, it has flow, it has rhythm, it has a sense of pacing, it has... one of the things that I commented to you is that you could work on your transitions. This isn't a matter of, like, this doesn't have transitions. Olivia returns with a glass of ice water. Here you go, Miss Steele. Thank you. Blonde number 2 marches over to the large desk, her heels clicking and echoing on the sandstone floor. She sits down and they both continue their work. Perhaps Mr. Gray insists on all his employees being blonde. I'm wondering idly if that's legal when the office door opens and a tall, elegantly dressed, attractive African-American man with short dreads exits. I have definitely worn the wrong clothes. None of this is fluid. This isn't flowing scene to scene. I don't get a sense that there's... I feel like I'm being assaulted with things happening. And that's purely a feeling. It's very difficult for me to articulate exactly where the transition should be or what they should be. But What I would say is that we're describing things that are so incredibly generic and so devoid of any kind of perspective, any kind of interesting point for us to latch onto as readers and like engage with, that it just doesn't even feel worth reading. I mean, we're literally reading about like hair colors, clothes, and not interesting clothes, suits. It's all suits, and it's all in this big skyscraper. So it's so incredibly bland. Your writing was not bland. Absolutely not bland. It was poetic. It flowed. It was very high quality. I wouldn't level any kind of, I have no bad remarks for your writing at all. I have points of critique for your writing at times for where I just think we can perfect things, and make it. I see promise in your writing, absolutely, for being a super, super engaging story for readers, especially because you've set up a very interesting world so far. I mean, you've got sort of a sci-fi thing going on with I mean, I'm interested in the character dynamic, the uncle and the niece, Kella. And I really loved that flashback, Lil Killa, that part. I was interested in why he would call her Lil Killa. Or like, is that part of the grooming that he's trying to do to like get her willing to commit murder or something like that? I don't know. Maybe he was like a former gangbanger or something. Those are all things that I think about. I was engaging with your work. I thought it was really good. It was full of intrigue and it was very interesting. And the world, I thought, was something that I would really like to invest in. Like, I liked the machines and that kind of stuff because you said it was partially written or partially taking place in the future. There were a lot of interesting things, and none of that is present here. So that's how I would compare them. He turns and says through the door, "Golf this week, Gray." I don't hear the reply. He turns, sees me, and smiles, his dark eyes crinkling at the corners. Olivia has jumped up and called the elevator. She seems to excel at jumping from her seat. She's more nervous than me. Really? Really? She's more nervous than you? How come you didn't notice that 5 minutes ago when you were logging in, or you were writing your, signing in at the visitors center? You're only now noticing how nervous she is, as though like, haha, she's more nervous than me. I've got credit over this one. I'm so anxious, and this one looks even worse. And yet somehow that change in her character happened only by the happenstance that you learned that she was an intern. Between those two events, before, this was the blonde receptionist who was intimidating her, and now she's, oh, look at that nervous intern over there just sprouting up from her chair. She's more nervous than me. All this says is that this character, Anna, just cares about status. She is shallow. Because the only thing that makes her think she must be more nervous than me is that she learned she's an intern. And therefore, she is now projecting from before where she was like, oh my God, she's this confident, well-dressed, sharp blonde. And now she's like, what a nervous wreck of an intern. Intern? At least I'm not an intern. I'm above an intern. Why? Because I'm a university student. I'm feeling the descriptions should lend the characters a chance to show who they are. Absolutely. Descriptions should lend the character a chance to show who they are. Descriptions should be told from a perspective. When you have, when you are describing something, you are describing them from a point of view. And that point of view, and even if you're doing it in third person, I think of, for instance, Harry Potter. A lot of, I'm going to briefly give credit, even though I think this is, I'll just briefly give credit. I'll give credit where I think something was done right, and we should always do that. Harry Potter, something was done absolutely right. The introduction that we get into the wizarding world, where Harry is just sort of awash with profundity. His eyes, you can't close them, right? He walks into from the amazement he feels at learning about Diagon Alley to I can purchase an owl, and I can and this is going to send messages for me, and this is what I need to go to school. Like this sense of wonder we get moving from place to place, and just sort of the opening sequences of the first Harry Potter book as we're learning about this wizarding world. That description tells us a lot. It tells us, I mean, it doesn't really tell us a lot because Harry is also a bland character. It's done really well in the sense that we are given this view because this is the world. It's our world. It's the real world that the Harry Potter world is overlaid on top of. And we are following Harry along. Harry is a normal citizen of our world, just like we are normal citizens of our world. And Harry gets to more or less experience, be inducted into all of this wizarding stuff, much in the same way that we get to alongside him. That is effective. It conveys a perspective. The perspective is coming in from normalcy and into wizardry is gonna be weird and shocking, but kind of wonderful and a bit like exciting. It's going to be filled with joyful moments, and it's going to be filled with some scary moments when he clutches that wand and all of a sudden, the wind starts rushing around him for some reason. And it's the wand that is destined to fight Lord Voldemort, right? Like all of that, like that conveys something, and it conveys something because the descriptions are given from a perspective. What perspective? Seriously, what perspective is this written from? I couldn't even tell you the perspective of a person who sees the world this blandly. Like, nobody looks at people and describes them as tall, elegantly dressed, attractive African-American men with short dreads. It's weird. Is she attracted to everyone? Is she sexually attracted to every single human being? She is literally, so far, the only person so far that she has not remarked on them being attractive or impeccable or immaculate is her roommate, who she described as boyish. So this is just perpetuating the most sexist possible tropes about women. It's offensive. And intentional? No idea. It's weird. It's weird. I don't know how you write something like this. I don't know how a human being in our world can view the world in this way that they end up writing something so incredibly bland. It doesn't make sense to me. What a marvel of psychology there must be. I don't hear the reply. He turns, sees me, and smiles, his dark eyes crinkling at the corners. Olivia has jumped up and called the elevator. She seems to excel at jumping from her seat. She's more nervous than me. Good afternoon, ladies, he says as he departs through the sliding door. Mr. Gray will see you now, Miss Steele. Do go through, blonde number 2 says. I stand rather shakily, trying to suppress my nerves. Gathering up my satchel, I abandon my glass of water and make my way to the partially open door. You don't need to knock, just go in. She smiles kindly. Everybody smiles kindly in this world. It's very nice. It's very nice. Nobody is smiling maliciously. If your character is smiling kindly to somebody, smiling is enough. Smiles are usually kind. We don't normally assume that smiles convey malicious intent. Unless the person smiling at them is the villain. If the person smiling at them is the villain, maybe it's worth adding kindly. I push open the door and stumble through, tripping over my own feet and falling headfirst into the office. Double crap. Me and my 2 left feet. I'm on my hands and knees in the doorway to Mr. Gray's office, and gentle hands are around me, helping me to stand. I am so embarrassed. Damn my clumsiness. I have to steel myself to glance up. Holy cow! He's so young. Miss Kavanaugh. He extends a long-fingered hand. What? What? Again, this sounds creepy to me. He extends a long-fingered hand to me. I think of Slender Man when I hear that. I think of somebody, like, I think of salad fingers. Long-fingered. I don't think of... She could have said he extends a large hand. It could have just been he has large hands, right? And we know what they say about people with large hands. It could have been large hand. No, she chose long-fingered hand. What? Hello, I'm Mr. Gray. What is this? Miss Kavanaugh. He extends a long-fingered hand to me once I'm upright. I'm Christian Gray. Are you all right? Would you like to sit? So young and attractive, very attractive. He's tall, dressed in a fine gray suit, white shirt, and black tie with unruly dark copper-colored hair and intense, bright gray eyes that regard me shrewdly. It takes a moment for me to find my voice. Actually, I mutter. If this guy is over 30, then I'm a monkey's uncle. In a daze, I place my hand in his and we shake. As our fingers touch, I feel an odd, exhilarating shiver run through me. I withdraw my hand hastily, embarrassed. Must be static. I blink rapidly, my eyelids matching my heart rate. That's what that looks like. That's weird. Miss Kavanaugh is indisposed, so she sent me. I hope you don't mind, Mr. Gray. And you are? His voice is warm, possibly amused, but it's difficult to tell from his impassive expression. He looks mildly interested, but above all, polite. Anastasia Steele. I'm studying English literature with Catherine. Miss Kavanaugh at Washington State. I see, he says simply. I think I see the ghost of a smile in his expression, but I'm not sure. Would you like to sit? He waves me toward a white leather-buttoned L-shaped couch. His office is way too big for just one man. Oh, I'm ready for the phallus in this paragraph. Everything's gonna be about that phallus right now. Okay, let's take it in. Let's take it in. His office is way too big for just one man. In front of the floor-to-ceiling windows, there's a huge modern dark wood desk that 6 people could comfortably eat around. That huge table could satisfy 6 people. It matches the coffee table by the couch. Everything else is white, ceiling, floors, and walls, except on the wall by the door, where a mosaic of small paintings hang, 36 of them arranged in a square. They are exquisite. A series of mundane, forgotten objects painted in such precise detail they look like photographs. Displayed together, they are breathtaking. This character is so easily amazed that I can only assume she has never gone outside ever. This is breathtaking. The view from the office was stunning. All of the people are so sharply and impeccably dressed. She has never watched television. She has never gone outside or watched television or worked in an office. She's at a university, but I guess everybody at her university are slobs. All of them are slobs. Every professor, every administration official, the president of her university dresses like a hipster. My goodness, she is like, I am astounded. I am astounded. And I am nay one to be astounded so easily. I am astounded at her ability to be astounded. A local artist, Troughton, says Gray when he catches my gaze. They're lovely, raising the ordinary to extraordinary. Who would say that? Actually, wait, it's got to be said like this. They're lovely, raising the ordinary to extraordinary. I murmur again. She's murmuring so much. I think that's all she does. She doesn't say things. She murmurs them. She only murmurs. What does murmur mean? I'm getting confused now. Doesn't that mean to mutter? A soft, indistinct sound made by a person or group of people speaking quietly or at a distance. To say something in a low, soft, or indistinct voice. Nina murmured an excuse and hurried away. Okay, so to say something in a soft, low, or indistinct voice. Okay, this is how she should be saying this. They're lovely. They're lovely. Raising the ordinary to extraordinary. I murmur, distracted both by him and the paintings. He cocks his head. Sorry. Haha, that was my own Freudian. Oh, goodness. He cocks his head. I thought she was going to describe like a piece of art that was in the shape of a cock. And I was like, okay, I'm done. The whole thing's phallic. Nope. He cocks his head to one side and regards me intently. I couldn't agree more, Miss Steele, he replies, his voice soft, and for some inexplicable reason I find myself blushing. Apart from the paintings, the rest of the office is cold, clean, and clinical. I wonder if it reflects the personality of the Adonis who sinks gracefully into one of the white leather chairs opposite me. I shake my head, disturbed at the direction of my thoughts, and retrieve Kate's questions from my satchel. She is already thinking about spanking him. That's the only reason that she should be just so disturbed at the direction of her thoughts. She's just immediately like, I want to spank him. I see that ass. I just want to spank it. I want to spank it like there's no tomorrow. Next, I set up the mini disc recorder and am all fingers and thumbs, dropping it twice on the coffee table in front of me. She's all fingers and thumbs. That's not a saying. That's not a saying. And it's a weird thing to coin. In that moment, I became fingers and thumbs. Also, thumbs are fingers. Thumbs are fingers. I don't care what all of those middle school people said when they wanted to debate me on this stupid subject. Thumbs are fingers. Mr. Gray says nothing, waiting patiently, I hope. As I become increasingly embarrassed and flustered. She has felt a total of 4 emotions while she's been in this building. She has felt embarrassed many times. She has felt stunned. She has been amazed, and she has been astounded. And of course, we all know 3 of those are actually the same. Oh, I apologize, I missed one. She was also intimidated. She's been intimidated, embarrassed, and a whole number of synonyms for mildly surprised to absolutely breathtakingly amazed. Oh, goodness. So, like, there is fruit to critiquing a work like this. There is, like, a reason to do it. It's not just an exercise in humor. It very much is an exercise in humor. But there are things we can learn from this. Number one is, actually, I'm gonna be honest. I am legitimately, and I'm not as sarcastically as I have said this already. I am legitimately impressed with how bland this writing is. It is a masterwork in like describing nothing while somehow moving characters, setting, and plot in a forward-ish direction. There's no part of this. There was no work put into thinking through how what any of this actually looks like, or how any of this fits together, into characterizing any of these characters so that they don't behave like mindless, attractive automatons. It is truly impressive that somehow this piece of writing continues to trudge forward. Mr. Gray says nothing, waiting patiently, I hope, as I become increasingly embarrassed and flustered. When I pluck up the courage to look at him, he's watching me, one hand relaxed in his lap, and the other cupping his chin and trailing his long index finger across his lips. I think he's trying to suppress a smile. Okay. Cupping his chin, trailing a long index finger across his lips. We're going to see how weird this looks. And I don't know what she was imagining. Long index finger. I don't know what the other fingers are doing. What is... Okay, maybe it's like... I don't know. It looks weird. But I guess maybe she's hot for this move. Hey girl, want to get a drink sometime? Long index finger. Mouths aren't that far up the face. I don't know how he's cupping his chin and doing the index finger thing. My fingers aren't that dexterous. These descriptions don't make sense. She could have tested this herself. Her editor could have tested this themselves and realized that this isn't a physically possible move with human limbs. I'm dying here. I'm dying. I think he's trying to suppress a smile. Sorry, I stutter. I'm not used to this. Take all the time you need, Miss Steele, he says. Do you mind if I record your answers? After you've taken so much trouble to set up the recorder, you ask me now? I flush. He's teasing me? I hope. I blink at him, unsure what to say, and I think he takes pity on me because he relents. No, I don't mind. Did Miss Kavanaugh, explain what the interview was for? Yes, to appear in the graduation issue of a student newspaper, as I shall be conferring the degrees at this year's graduation ceremony. Oh, this is news to me, and I'm temporarily preoccupied by the thought that someone much older than me, okay, maybe 6 years or so, and okay, mega successful, but still, is going to present me with my degree. Sorry, it's someone not much older than me. I frown, dragging my wayward attention back to the task at hand. These adjectives are slowing us down so much in this paragraph that it makes this even more insipid than if they weren't there. These adjectives are they're detracting hard from this. And the adverbs as well. Now, adverbs, what's the sequel? 50 Shades Darker, I believe, is the sequel to 50 Shades of Grey. Grey. And then we have like 50 Shades Darkest is the final one, I think, or something. No, it's 50 Shades Freed because 50 Shades Darkest would have made sense. 50 Shades 50 Shades Freed. Yeah. Oh my God. So bad. Oh, what a dumb title. By the way, I hope we aren't going somewhere like anti-Semitic or not anti-Semitic, anti-LGBT or something with that typo there. Got to be careful. Watch where our R's are going. But I'll give you benefit of the doubt on that one. Don't be careful. That's what I'll say. Hope we're not getting a punchline. I frown, dragging my wayward attention back to the task at hand. Good, I swallow nervously. I have some questions, Mr. Gray. I smooth a stray lock of hair behind my ear. I thought you might, he says, deadpan. He's laughing at me. My cheeks hit at the realization, and I sit up and square my shoulders in an attempt to look taller and more intimidating. Pressing the start button on the recorder, I try to look professional. You're very young to have amassed such an oh, no, sorry. She's saying that. You're very young to have amassed such an empire. To what do you owe your success? I glance up at him. His smile is rueful, but he looks vaguely disappointed. Business is all about people, Miss Steele, and I'm very good at judging people. I know how they tick, what makes them flourish, what doesn't, what inspires them, and how to incentivize them. I employ an exceptional team, and I reward them well. He pauses and fixes me with his gray stare. I'm getting lost on what the meaning of the word gray is here. Like, the color is actually something that is, it's not a remarkable color. It is a color specifically known for being unremarkable. And it is being repeated constantly. He has gray eyes, a gray stare, like, but they're bright gray eyes, right? They're meant to be like something that encapsulates her. My belief is to achieve success in any scheme, one has to make oneself master of that. What? My belief is to achieve success in any scheme one has to make oneself master of that scheme. One has to make one's... Okay. This is a weird sentence. I'm just going to roll with it and pretend like I know what it says. My belief is to achieve success in any scheme one has, to make oneself master of that scheme, know it inside and out, know every detail. I work hard, very hard to do that. Very hard. You know what I mean. I make decisions based on logic and facts. I have a natural gut instinct. I can spot and nurture a good solid idea and good people. The bottom line is, it's always down to good people. Maybe you're just lucky. This isn't on Kate's list, but he's so arrogant. His eyes flare momentarily in surprise. I don't subscribe to luck or chance, Miss Steele. Now, this is accurate language for a billionaire. I don't subscribe to luck or chance, Miss Steele. The harder I work, the more luck I seem to have. It really is all about having the right people on your team and directing their energies accordingly. I think it was Harvey Firestone who said, "The growth and development of people is the highest calling of leadership." You sound like a control freak. Okay, this dialogue is actually a little bit charming. Something good was done here. Something mildly good was done in this dialogue that immediately our main character becomes the most abrasive possible interviewer. She was previously so nervous. She was like nervous and afraid in the lobby. We thought she was going to cave. I was set up to believe as the reader that she was going to come in here and be like a wimp. Be unable to interview him because she'd just be like sitting here marveling at like, oh my God, you're so attractive and your hair is so bronze and curly. Oh, I'm so in love with you already. And your tower is so big. That's what I was like led to believe would happen at the start of this interaction. And instead we get a fairly tense interaction between them. That was well delivered. That was well delivered. You sound like a control freak. The words are out of my mouth before I can stop them. Never mind. Not well delivered. She's just impulsive. She's just one of those impulsive, emotional women. That's what this is about. It's not that she just suddenly had some kind of backbone and was like, I'm gonna stick it to the billionaire guy I'm got to be interviewing. I didn't even want to be here. That would have been an interesting character. No, this is the submissive character, the character who is so utterly submissive, she submits to her own instincts. The words are out of my mouth before I can stop them. This is the character that the author is setting us up to think, that girl needs a spanking. Oh, I exercise control in all things, Miss Steele, he says, without a trace of humor in his smile. I look at him, and he holds my gaze steadily, impassive. My heartbeat quickens, and my face flushes again. Why does he have such an unnerving effect on me? His overwhelming good looks? I have been in front of humans who I thought, you're a very attractive person. And at no point did I get so utterly flummoxed by their whatever chemical interaction they were having with my libido that I was, why am I so disturbed? Is it their overwhelming good looks? That is the start of a porno. That's what happens in a porno. That does not happen in real life. People do not get so completely captured by another person's good looks. Other people can be pretty freaking attractive. Other people can be very entrancing to us. But this is, and people don't think this. What actually would happen inside her head, even if this was the case, even if, and I will grant, sometimes you can get pretty nervous around somebody that you think is attractive. Fair enough. I accept it. That's human. But what's not going to happen is the internal dialogue is going to be, is it because of his overwhelming good looks? No, the internal dialogue is going to be something like, why does he have such an effect on me? I'm so annoyed by him. Is it because he's arrogant? Is it because does he think he's self-important? It's because he's acting like he's too cool. Oh, I want to knock him down a peg. What happens is you get defensive. If you understand anything about human psychology, it's that humans don't want to admit what their actual weaknesses are. So maybe, and I will grant, it's possible that she could be so weak-kneed for him that his overwhelming good looks are causing her to be this flummoxed. She is not going to blame his overwhelming good looks, because in her head, that's going to be pushing up his pride. That's going to be pushing up like, he's got an advantage over me. Why? Because he's so attractive and I'm just nothing before him. People get defensive, and they justify things to themselves in defensive ways. And they try to do that by knocking other people down a peg. When I get into an argument with somebody, I don't think, oh my God, why are they like winning this argument? Is it because they're so much smarter than me? No. Even if that's the case, even if they actually are a lot smarter than me, my initial instinct is going to be, oh my God, why won't they just see reason? They're so wrong about this. Why do they keep pushing it? We get defensive. We don't just give in to the other side's advantages, even if their advantages are stunningly, amazingly hot bods with good looks. Like I said, 100 proof is not enough. I'm listening to this to know what not to do in my story. Indeed, that is the best reason to be listening to this. One of the things that I have a problem with is if I read good fiction. I try not to read too much good fiction. That sounds like a joke. I am actually being serious. And the reason is that good fiction will... And I put a bunch of caveats on this. Number one, there are some authors that I can read infinite amounts of, and it doesn't happen. I can read also older novels. no problem. I can read like War and Peace or like, like older like classics, those kind of things. No problem whatsoever, because they're just written in such a different style. But the problem is if I read actual good novels that are written in present, like they're contemporary, or anywhere near contemporary, then they will bleed into my writing style. After I read Lord of the Rings, every short story I wrote had the long, winding, listy sentences, the constant flow of like, I'm just going to ramble on for the next 30 minutes to tell you about the trees of a story. That happened in every single one of my short stories for the next like 3 months. And so like now I have to be very, very mindful and careful about which ones I read, because I know that it's going to have an effect on my writing, and I don't want my writing style to be compromised by something just because it was the most recent thing that I read. So whenever I start a new project, I have to sort of silo myself away from good fiction. So that's why I often read crap on stream. Oh, I actually read a story that kept going from one event in its timeline to another, and I just couldn't follow it, so I scrapped it. Yeah, scrapped. Stopped reading it, yeah. And of course, the absolute crap that I'm reading on stream, when I refer to the absolute crap that I'm reading on stream, I'm referring to Eye of Argon and this and Twilight. Only works that have been published. Not least of which because I would never call a work in progress absolute crap or anything like that. And Raving Decorus, you are an amazing writer. You better believe it. I am just going to go over here and grab a rag, so don't think I'm leaving you. My drink is forming an enormous puddle. I think Anna was over here. Oh, dis. But I can't bring myself to remove the flashbacks in my story because I feel like it adds something really important. Don't remove the flashbacks. Why would you do that? Don't remove them. Keep them in there. Here's my advice for you, Raving. You should write the full story, flashbacks and all. And in fact, you should write it for you. You should write it for you. It does not have to be read by anybody. It doesn't, like, the worst thing I ever did to myself was force other... Wait, this is going to come out weird. The worst thing I ever did to myself was force other people to read my work. I didn't force them. I asked them to. They agreed, blah, blah, blah. But I had beta readers, or they were basically beta readers, although I was nowhere near the actual beta reading process. So it was first draft. I'm going to send this off to like a bunch of people and just ask them, like, can you give me some feedback? I sent it off to three people in my family who I trusted to give me quality feedback on the work. And it was, at the time, it was both a good thing and a bad thing. It was a good thing in the sense that I got a lot of different perspectives on where my writing was doing well and where it wasn't. And I grew enormously from that. But it was a terrible thing because what it taught me was that I should be writing for an audience, and I should not have been writing for an audience. I should have been writing for myself. And that was the number one thing that just, like, my level of growth as a writer was exponential the moment I decided, screw readers. I'm not writing for anybody else. I'm not writing this with the intent of reading it to anybody. I'm not writing this with the intent of publishing it. I am writing this because I want to write the absolute best possible story I can write for me. And the moment that I started doing that, I started writing the absolute best possible story I could write in my own eyes. So that's what I encourage you to do. You should write the story as you want it for yourself. And don't worry about readers. And I know it's going to be tempting and you will want other people to comment on you. Now, the only exception that I will make to this is if you are a person who struggles with writing output. for years. And this is why I actually think that that process of beta reading that I did with those people, with those family members, those 3 people, in my first novel that I was writing, may have actually been the necessary step for me to be able to overcome, so that I could actually end up writing the novel that I wanted to write for myself, as opposed to the novel that I wanted to write for other people. But if you are a person who struggles with output, if you're a person who has a difficult time writing, your 2,000 words a day or whatever it is, and maybe you're a person who has a hard time staying motivated in a project. Maybe you're the kind of person who, drops projects really, really easily, moves on to a new one, gets a sudden idea and inspiration, just wants to, ditch everything and start fresh. Maybe you're a person who gets halfway through a story, you get stuck, you get frustrated, you try rewriting the same scene 7 times, think it's not going to move forward, and you decide, you know what, screw it. This whole story has a bunch of problems with it. I don't even want to continue doing this anymore. If you're that kind of person, then getting readers is going to help you get to the end. Once you have finished one long novel, you're done. You're done. You can write anything. If that's your problem, if your problem is output, if your problem is not output, if you have no problem outputting work, writing 100,000 words without readers, because what's good about readers is they can keep you accountable. They can send you that email like, hey, did you send me the latest chapter? I thought you said you were going to send me a chapter every week. Let me know if I missed it, if it ended up in my junk. That happened a couple of times when I fell behind, and then I had readers who were so avid, and they were family members, so of course there was a bit of a personal investment there, but they were actually legitimately interested in the work, and that meant something to me. That meant a lot to me. I knew that there were people who were depending on my ability to output a chapter of the story and send it to them in their inbox so that they could provide me comment, because they had set aside time for this in their schedule. Me knowing that, I wrote so much easier. I put out the full story, all 60 chapters, 127,000 words in the end. And it was all because I had readers who every week were like, hey, I thought you said you were going to send me a chapter on Friday night. Where is it? When I knew I was going to be late on delivering them a chapter because I had finals that week or whatever, I had to quickly send them an email. I had to say, hey, sorry, your chapter's going to be a week late. No chapter this week. That helped me. That helped me stay accountable, or it kept me to account. And that I highly recommend if output is your problem. But if output is not your problem, only write for you. Write for nobody else. Do not let other people taint your work before you have had the opportunity to judge its merits, because that can be the most demotivating force ever. You don't want somebody to squeeze the life out of something before you have had the chance to breathe life into it. Why does he have such an unnerving effect on me? His overwhelming good looks, maybe? The way his eyes blaze at me? The way he strokes his index finger against his lower lip? I can't figure out a way to do this sexy. This is the stupidest character. Like, a thumb could work. You can do this with a thumb. You can. No, you can't. You can't do it in a sexy way. You can do it in a pensive way. Huh. I see. You can't. No part of that is sexy. That's weird. This is weird. The way he strokes his index finger against his lower lip. I wish he'd stop doing that. Besides, immense power is acquired by assuring yourself in your secret reveries that you were born to control things, he continues, his voice soft. Do you feel that you have immense power? Control freak? I employ over 40,000 people, Miss Steele. That gives me a certain sense of responsibility. Power, if you will. If I were to decide I was no longer interested in the telecommunications business and sell up 20,000 people would struggle to make their mortgage payments after a month or so. My mouth drops open. I am staggered by his lack of humility. Uncommon. I don't think this is an uncommon reaction. I don't think it's an unjustified reaction, but it's an uncommon reaction. We have not been introduced to her as some sort of champion of human rights or some kind of like socialist, economic, like populist or whatever. We have no reason to think that she voted for Bernie Sanders in 2016. Of course, this was written in 2006. We have no reason to think that she voted for Gore. We have no reason to think she voted. Don't you have a board to answer to? I ask, disgusted. We knew she asked that disgusted by the question. When people ask questions like this, you notice I didn't have to look at the word disgusted to know the tone in which to read this. Don't you have a board to answer to? We did not need the word disgusted. This word here, this is for like bottom of the barrel. You are, I don't know, because people, 90% of the people who will be able to read this and will want to read this book will not need to know that this was conveyed disgustedly. You just don't need these after dialogue tags. The dialogue tag is enough. The dialogue tag, the simpler the better, because the more you allow the reader to import an intonation. One of the things that I think is it's beautiful about Hemingway's novels and Hemingway's conversations, his dialogue especially, when he allows the dialogue to be center stage in the work, and he removes all of these dialogue tags and all of these emotional expressions, and the only thing in those pages is action when a character picks up a cup, or they cut into their bread, or they take a sip of soup, and their dialogue, the words that they are saying. When you have only that on the page, you get a cornucopia of experiences made possible to the reader. Because the reader can go into this scene thinking that one character talks like a supervillain and the other one talks like an innocent fledgling hero. That could be the natural way that they approach the interaction between these two characters. But wait, there's more. Maybe, instead, your reader isn't somebody who's spent their life reading superhero comics. Maybe instead they're somebody who's spent their life reading romance novels. And they read this interaction between two characters as subtly flirtatious and mildly domineering. That could be totally fine. That could be a conversation that has sexual charge to it. In one, we could get an interaction which has sexual charge, and in another, we could get an interaction, the same dialogue, but because we pared everything down and we haven't told the reader how to read it, the reader is able to approach it based off of what they already can think of, the experiences that they've already had in the books that they've already read. So they approach it thinking that it's a supervillain interaction with the billionaire character who is being the controlling and domineering, and every time he responds to her, I own my company. I don't have to answer to a board. Or, I own my company. I don't have to answer to a board. Or maybe it's, I own my company. I don't have to answer to a board. Right? Those are all extremely different tones. When we add words like this, disgusted, we remove the ability for the reader to know that intuitively, for them to engage with the scene in the organic way that writing, we lose the magic. The magic is for the reader to be picturing the things you don't say. The things that you don't put on that page. And the reader goes, I pictured it this way. And you're like, yep, that's what I wanted. I own my company. I don't have to answer to a board. He raises an eyebrow at me. I flush. Of course, I would know this if I had done some research. But holy crap, he's so arrogant. I change tack. And do you have any interests outside your work? I have varied interests, Miss Steele. A ghost of a smile touches his lips. Very varied. And for some reason, I'm confounded and heated by his steady gaze. Because he's actually a robot and he's staring with microwaves. His eyes are alight with some wicked thought. Those are your eyes. Those are your eyes. You are projecting hard. But if you work so hard, what do you do to chill out? Chill out? He smiles, revealing perfect white teeth. I want to point out how odd it would be. No, actually, you know what? I'm going to let this one slide. I'm going to let this one slide. This one's not. This is just movie. This is like cinema odd. It's not necessarily human being odd. It is a little human being odd. Chill out. He smiles, revealing perfect white teeth. Chill out. Nope, never mind. I'm going back to it's weird. I don't think people smile with their teeth that organically. Maybe a billionaire would, I guess, if they're so used to photo shoots or something. Maybe he knows that he's got some sort of killer smile that people have told him. I don't know. Or maybe he's just that arrogant. I stop breathing. Okay. Again, this isn't a thing people do. People don't stop breathing. It's biologically necessary. It's hard. It takes intention to stop breathing. Nothing makes you stop breathing. Your heart can stop. Your heart can, you can feel your heart flutter or your heart stutter, or you can metaphorically or figuratively feel your heart stop. People don't stop breathing. They could do a double take. Maybe they take a deep breath. Maybe they get startled. Their breaths are quick. They inhale sharply. They don't stop breathing. It's the little things in this that detract from it, because they're things that it just feels like this whole thing was just written with libido and id. There's no intellect whatsoever. There's no thought given to scene construction. There is no second. Holy shit. That was, you probably couldn't hear it. It was either fireworks, possibly gunshots, or, very staccato thunder. Whew. Chill out. He smiles, revealing perfect white teeth. I stop breathing. He really is beautiful. No one should be this good looking. Well, to chill out, as you put it. I sail, I fly, I indulge in various physical pursuits. He shifts in his chair. I'm a very wealthy man, Miss Steele, and I have expensive and absorbing hobbies. Okay, it might be my fault for the way that I'm reading this. I'm a very wealthy man, Miss Steele, and I have expensive and absorbing hobbies. I glance quickly at Kate's questions, wanting to get off this subject. Why? Why? What's wrong with this subject? It's hobbies. He has expensive and absorbing hobbies. That's a subject in an interview that would be perfectly reasonable. You invest in manufacturing. Why specifically? I ask. Why does he make me so uncomfortable? Indeed, why does he? I like to build things. I like to know how things work, what makes things tick, how to construct and deconstruct. And I have a love of ships. What can I say? That sounds like your heart talking rather than logic and facts. His mouth quirks up, and he stares appraisingly at me. Possibly. Though there are people who say I don't have a heart. Why would they say that? Because they know me well. His lip curls in a wry smile. Would your friends say you're easy to get to know? And I regret the question as soon as I say it. It's not on Kate's list. Why did you ask it then? That's not a normal question. That's not a thing that pops normally into people's head. Okay, maybe it is. Because they know me well. What actually happened here is the wry smile interrupted this. These two lines of dialogue necessarily flow with each other. Because they know me well. Would your friends say you're easy to get to know? If you have this kind of direct response, you need them to be in rapid fire. Because otherwise it disconnects the logical way that these things flow off each other. This lip curling in a wry smile, number one, we already knew he was going to do something like that. We have an image of this character in our head. The archetypical form of this character is one who will smile wryly at that remark. We already know exactly how his facial expressions are going with every kind of statement and question and comment that he makes. If we're going to have dialogue that responds like this, where she is taking one small part, that people know him, and she wants to know, are you easy to get to know? You need these to be in rapid succession so that the reader can immediately see why she would ask a question like that if it's not on Kate's list. Because my assumption immediately when I read this question was, oh, that must be a question on Kate's list. And when she said it's not on Kate's list, I was like, she's fucking weird for thinking of this question. But she's not. This is fairly okay dialogue, but it's interrupted here, and this needs to go. I'm a very private person, Miss Steele. I go a long way to protect my privacy. I don't often give interviews. He trails off. Why did you agree to this one? Because I'm a benefactor of the university, and for all intents and purposes, I couldn't get Miss Kavanaugh off my back. She badgered and badgered my PR people, and I admire that kind of tenacity. I know how tenacious Kate can be. He doesn't have very good PR people. So this is a case where just a little bit of extra consideration and world building would have probably broken the story. You'd have to be a little bit more creative. This just isn't realistic. Badgering PR people isn't going to be able to get you an interview with somebody like Tim Cook. Although Tim Cook, is he a billionaire? I don't even know if he's a billionaire. Badgering PR people isn't going to get you an interview with Jeff Bezos. It's not going to get, and maybe he is not that big a billionaire. Elon Musk, or I don't know. I'm trying to think of young charismatic billionaires, but I'm pretty sure all of them are weird standoffish nerds. Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos. Yeah, they're all standoffish weirdo nerds. Maybe this story is unrealistic for many reasons. I know how tenacious Kate can be. That's why I'm sitting here squirming uncomfortably under his penetrating gaze when I should be studying for my exams. People like E.L. James are the reason we are not able to use the word penetrate in any context except sexual. You also invest in farming technologies. Why are you interested in this area? We can't eat money, Miss Steele, and there are too many people on this planet who don't have enough to eat. That sounds very philanthropic. Is this something you feel passionately about, feeding the world's poor? He shrugs, very non-committal. Again, this is over-descriptive. We didn't need, Obviously, he's being non-committal if he's shrugging. If he shrugs at, are you passionate about feeding poor people? He goes, Shrugging is very non-committal. It's very nonchalant. Didn't need to say that it was non-committal. So we're just being like, we're really treating our readers. This story is treating our readers like they are 11-year-olds. This has the, I would say this has the reading level of probably like 11. It's insulting. People should feel insulted if they fit into like the target demographic of this. They should feel insulted that this was published for their target demographic. It's a shrewd business, he murmurs. Why does everybody murmur in this world? This must be a second world. Like, this must be an alternate world, because people don't murmur this much in the real world. Though I think he's being disingenuous. It doesn't make sense. Feeding the world's poor? I can't see the financial benefits of this, only the virtue of the ideal. I glance at the next question, confused by his attitude. Do you have a philosophy? If so, what is it? I don't have a philosophy as such. Maybe a guiding principle. Carnegie's. A man who acquires the ability to take full possession of his own mind may take possession of anything else to which he is justly entitled. I'm very singular, driven. I like control of myself and those around me. I'm going to get to this weird-ass line of dialogue she says here. It just sets up the weird, like, sexual energy that she has for him. I'm going to get to that in a moment. This is the second time he has quoted somebody. Now, I actually am somewhat inclined to believe this may be realistic. Rich people often hide behind the wise words of wisdom that form their guiding principles and the backbones of their successful companies. They never want to admit that anything could have been done by chance or happenstance, and they always want to say, I'm rich because I adhered to a set of guiding beliefs and ideals and virtues, and I built something from the ground up. My success was inevitable because of my genius. That's what billionaires want to believe, most of them. It's a common fallacy. Anybody who is successful generally will believe that, and genuinely, both of them, generally and genuinely, will believe that they did all of the work themselves and they are owed all of the virtues of their success. And that's, I mean, it's a common psychological phenomenon. It's a fallacy that humans naturally buy into. When things are going well, it is because of the work that we have put in. But when things are going poorly, it is the circumstance. And to be fair, when things are going poorly, it often is the circumstance. But what we are not willing to admit is that when things are going well, it's often the circumstance. It's the circumstance that a lot of people, not a lot, it's the circumstance that some people and those specific people are extremely wealthy. It's circumstance. They got lucky. They started at a business. It had it, right time, right place. All of a sudden, everything hit the market. It was crazy. They made lots of money. Sometimes, and I'm not saying there's no element of intelligence. There's not. It's not a zero. Like there are some elements of like legitimate work that has to be put in. You do have to have a good idea. Sometimes you have to be able to predict market trends and stuff like that. For the most part, though, it's gambling. They're products of gambling. And you can be a good gambler because you're good at reading the table. You can be a good gambler because you're really smart with how you're going to partition your money out in various gambles. You can be a good gambler because you're really, really good at bluffing people. You can be a good gambler because you are just so incredibly confident whenever you enter the game that you make other people fold because they're too afraid to play you. You can also be a really good gambler just by being exceedingly wealthy and being able to outbid everybody else at the table. And knowing that when they lose, they're always going to be coming back at you for more. All of those are the ways that billionaires are formed, especially the last one. Now, this guy keeps quoting people. as though these are the people who will be responsible for his success. He believes in these things. You know, he quotes Carnegie word for word. He quotes them with like weird accuracy, but that's fine. Maybe he's actually memorized these words. And that does seem like a thing billionaires actually do. Like if you read any interview with a billionaire, oftentimes they do just randomly quote people that they think are wise. And they're like, I follow the guiding principle of Carnegie. This is a book, though, and it's boring. He's done this twice. It's feeling like a meme now. If he does it a third time, this author had no idea what to write for his dialogue. That's why they kept having him quote people. I know that because every time I resort to quoting for a character to quote somebody, the first time I do it, it's to introduce some kind of idea or tell something about the character. This is the kind of character who quotes people. That can be notable, especially if they're like a scholar or something. Yes, it was the Copernicus who said long ago that the sun it could be the sun that would fall into the earth, and that is the way that we will know how it rotates. Sure, whatever. Doing it more than once is weird. People don't sit here using other people's words for their own words like that. People usually just talk. People talk. Normal people talk to each other with their own words. It does not take a whole lot of effort to come up with a response. It does not weave through another person's wisdoms. And in this case, in a book, even if in real life a billionaire would quote endlessly other people, question after question, keep it to one. It's a gimmick. Cut it off at the head. One is enough. Don't repeat. Even if it works, don't repeat it. It starts to feel formulaic and boring. So you want to possess things. You are a control freak. I want to deserve to possess them, but yes, bottom line, I do. You sound like the ultimate consumer. I am. He smiles, but the smile doesn't touch his eyes. Again, this is at odds with someone who wants to feed the world, so I can't help thinking that we're talking about something else, but I'm absolutely mystified as to what it is. I swallow hard. The temperature in the room is rising, or maybe it's just me. I want this interview to be over. Surely Kate has enough material now. I glance at the next question. You were adopted. How far do you think that shaped the way you are? Oh, this is personal. I stare at him, hoping he's not offended. His brow furrows. I have no way of knowing. My interest is piqued. How old were you when you were adopted? That's a matter of public record, Miss Steele. His tone is stern. I flush again. Crap. Yes, of course. If I'd known I was doing this interview, I would have done some research. I move on quickly. You've had to sacrifice a family life for your work. That's not a question. He's terse. We know he's terse. We can tell by the fact that he answered, that's not a question. People don't answer, that's not a question, when they're being friendly. Overwritten. That is what overwriting looks like when you're telling the reader how to interpret events that they already knew how to interpret. Because they're common sense. It's very easy to interpret these things. This is not a complex interaction between two 3D chess players, masters of the human form of communication, who are double bluffing each other at every other turn in order to create a web of deception. These are two fairly normal, incredibly tropey, to a meme-ish degree, characters having a fairly bland conversation. I can feel myself becoming more jaded with every paragraph we descend into this. I expect something unique or profound to be said or implied in an interview because they get personal, or at least I try. Yeah, indeed. We've had nothing unique or profound to be said, except for when he quotes other people. He can't come up with anything that's unique or profound. And she can't seem to get it out of him. This is also, now I actually think well, I'll hold off. I'll hold off on this. I kind of like want to make a note or something. I'll introduce and sort of what I'm thinking here, and then as an editor, okay, as an editor, what I'm looking at in this interaction, I want to know if this is going somewhere, right? I want to know if this is something that's important to the story, if this is something that's important to like the scene's development. I want to know specifically, and what I'm talking about here is we have this incredibly tense interaction that's developing between them. Trying to highlight it well. Here we go. She says, how old? So first of all, she asks him, you were adopted. How does that shape you? He's like, I have no way of knowing. She doesn't know how to continue it, right? Because she's not a practiced reporter. Fine. She says, how old were you when you were adopted? So she's trying to get more information out of him. Good. That's a matter of public record, Miss Steele. His tone is stern, right? So, and that's fine. He can reprimand her for that for a little bit. Like, what are you? Like, did you come to this interview prepared at all? Now, to be fair, number one, the most unrealistic part of this, unless, maybe, and I'm pretty sure she isn't, unless she is a reporter that works at the same place, at the same university newspaper that her friend works at, Kate, it's fucking weird for Kate to have passed this interview, a super big important interview for the entire school, onto Anna. Now, Kate is the editor of the newspaper. Anna better fucking work at that newspaper. If she works at that newspaper, she is the most incompetent reporter I've ever read in a book. But if she doesn't work at that newspaper, Kate is the most incompetent editor of a newspaper I've ever read in a book. One of them is incompetent at their jobs, because Kate should have assigned a journalist to this on her team. And if Anna is a journalist, she should have been able to handle interviews better. And we also probably should have already known that she was actually a journalist this whole time. That should have been made a little bit more directly, that they work together. Now, she asks him this question, how old were you when you were adopted? In order to try to dig deeper into this, after he gives her the sort of non-answer, oh, I have no way of knowing. I'm going to be vague and pensive and make you dig it out of me if you want something. How old were you? That's a matter of public record. He reprimands her for asking such a stupid question, which is clearly publicly available. She could have just Googled it, right? That's sort of what he's saying. You should have Googled this. You should have done the bare minimum of work required of a person for an interview here. Who are you? Why are you in my office? Fine. Good. Number one, usually he would still answer the question. If you must know. And he probably wouldn't say, if you must know. He would say, that's a matter of public record, Miss Steele. I'm surprised you didn't Google it. I was 6. That's what you would say. He would still answer the question. He's not going to leave her in the dark just because she didn't Google it. Maybe he is that much of a dick. He's got to be a pretty big dick not to say that. Because this could just be the one piece of research that she overlooked, right? She could be otherwise a good reporter who just like screwed up and forgot to Google this. Sometimes reporters do forget to do a piece of research. Fair enough. He doesn't answer the question. So we carry on. I move on quickly. You've had to sacrifice a family of life for your work. That's not a question. Now we have this tense interaction developing between them. As an editor, my thinking is, okay, this should amount to something. This should result in something. This incredibly tense interaction that's developing between them should lead to the end of the interview. It should lead to maybe a feeling that she's like, oh, I've got to get back into his good graces. I've got to ask questions that he likes. I've got to be friendly again. Play softball with him. Ask him some softball questions. Throw him a couple easy ones. Ask him, what's your favorite food? What's your favorite color? Do you like skis? What's your favorite brand of woman? Do you like blonde number 1 or number 2? Throw him some really easy questions. That could be another way, right? So like if we have this tense interaction developing between them, it should result in something. So that's what I'm expecting as a developmental editor. I'm looking at this interaction and I'm like, okay, this should come to a head somewhere. This should result in something meaningful for the scene, and that's what I'm looking for. So as I continue, if that doesn't pay off, that's going to be something that sticks out in my head as underdeveloped. Maybe it does pay off. Hopefully, some editors did their job. It looks like maybe the developmental editors did their job in this, and nobody else did. Definitely the line editors gave zero craps about this. It's unfortunate. Their job is the hardest, and clearly the most balls were dropped there. That's not a question. He's terse. Sorry. I squirm, and he's made me feel like an errant child. I try again. Have you had to sacrifice a family of life for your work? I have a family. I have a brother and a sister and 2 loving parents. I'm not interested in extending my family beyond that. Are you gay, Mr. Gray? He inhales sharply, and I cringe, mortified. Crap! Why didn't I employ some kind of filter before I read this straight out? How can I tell him I'm just reading the questions? Damn Kate and her curiosity. No, Anastasia, I'm not. He raises his eyebrows, a cool gleam in his eyes. He does not look pleased. A cool gleam in his eyes does not sound like the look of somebody who is displeased. This doesn't jibe. This feels like we're doing like a Mad Libs. It's like a Mad Libs of vague descriptions we can throw in to make it seem like we did the job of writing. A cool gleam in his eyes. This could be thrown in anywhere in writing in this book. And anywhere else it would have seemed more in place than here. He does not look pleased. These don't go together. Be careful about descriptions like that. We want our descriptions to feed on each other, to compound, to serve the reader in delivering a more vivid image, and this delivers a confusing one. I apologize. It's written here. It's the first time he's said my name. My heartbeat has accelerated, and my cheeks are heating up again. Nervously, I tuck my loosened hair behind my ear. It is not the first time he has said your name. It is the first time he has said your first name. And that's weird. He would have said, no, Miss Steele. But, okay, I'll give it. Maybe he's trying some sort of power play here or something, or he's trying to make her feel uncomfortable. Maybe he's noticed that his impeccably good looks are having an effect on her. He cocks his head to one side. These aren't your own questions? The blood drains from my head. Oh, no. No. Kate, Miss Kavanaugh, she compiled the questions. Are you colleagues on the student paper? Oh, crap. I have nothing to do with the student paper. It's her extracurricular activity, not mine. My face is aflame. Okay, suspicions confirmed. She's not a reporter. She is roommates with the most inept newspaper editor in the world. Somebody who is so bad at her job, she's not willing to just contact the coworkers who are employed to ensure the publication of the paper they all work at. And she sent her roommate, her anxious, bumbling, fumbling, terrible wreck of an anxious mess of a roommate, to interview the all-important billionaire who's going to be handling their graduation. That is a massive internal inconsistency. Even for university students. No, she's my roommate. He rubs his chin in quiet deliberation, his gray eyes appraising me. In case we forgot, his eyes are gray. like the title of the book. Like the title of the book. Remember, because there's 50 Shades of Grey, and we're getting every single one of them in this chapter, but we're not actually getting them distinguished. Every one of them is just gray. So she just repeats the word gray over and over, but don't worry, they're different shades. Sometimes his eyes are just a little bit shadowed by his eyelids, and other times he's sort of like underneath a little bit of a canopy, and they're like different shades of gray. See, like there's like 2 tones and stuff. Sometimes they're really, really bright. They're a bright shade of gray, but other times they're dark and mysterious and stormy. These are all the 50 Shades of Grey in his eyes. It's all coming together. Did you volunteer to do this interview? He asks, his voice deadly quiet. What? How is... What? His voice was deadly quiet. Okay. I'm gonna show you what that means. Did you volunteer to do this interview? Did you volunteer to do this? It's not picking up on the mic. Did you volunteer to do this interview? That's a voice that is deadly quiet. Actually, it's not a voice that's deadly quiet because it's still whispering. This would be a voice that's deadly quiet. Because I'm not speaking. Voices don't get deadly quiet unless they're just whispering. And if they're whispering, just say they're whispering. Okay. I'm not losing it. Not losing it. We're holding it together. We're holding it together, family. More inebriation. Hang on, who's supposed to be interviewing whom? His eyes burn into me and I'm compelled to answer with the truth. I was drafted. She's not well. My voice is weak and apologetic. Again, notice I didn't need this. I knew it. I was drafted. She's not well. And even if I didn't know it, I didn't need it. I was drafted. She's not well. That explains a great deal. There's a knock at the door and blonde number 2 enters. I hope to the good Lord in heaven that nobody here, nobody on this entire platform, but probably a lot of people on this entire platform, but at least nobody who has come to the writing section of Twitch need any kind of explanation as to why we should not number the blondes in our story. This does not convey what the author thinks it conveys. Here is what the author thought it conveyed. The mundanity and the commonality of the number of blondes in the building is so great, and they have such a clonish appearance that there is no possible way to distinguish them, not by the names on their name tags, not by the features on their face, not by the colors of their eyes, not by the different shades of their hairs, not by the different shapes of their bodies, not by any mildly distinguishing features of their skin or their face or their orifices, whatever. They have absolutely no individuality as human beings. They are copy-pasted Barbies that the only possible way that we could distinguish them is if we assigned numbers to them so that we can know blonde number 1 from blonde number 2. That is actually encapsulated both what she intended and what she did communicate. But the problem is that the way that she intended it, the way that the author intended this, was that they are like as though this were like a normal thing in the world. And the problem is that it comes across as just sexism. because the only people who have that much trouble distinguishing human beings from each other are the people who view human beings as sex objects, who view people as things to be used or things to be exploited, and not, you know, like flesh and blood, normal humans with like hearts, souls, brains. Of course, they can't actually have brains, right? Because they're blondes. Ha 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 ha. See what we did there? We made a blonde joke. I'm dismayed. I'm legitimately dismayed at this, what this is. How long are these albums? Why did they like, goodness. We're just like blowing through them. Let's see here. Mr. Gray, forgive me for interrupting, but your next meeting is in 2 minutes. We're not finished here, Andrea. Please cancel my next meeting. Andrea hesitates, gaping at him. She appears lost. He turns his head slowly to face her and raises his eyebrows. She flushes bright pink. Oh good, it's not just me. Very well, Mr. Gray, she mutters, then exits. He frowns and turns his attention back to me. Where were we, Miss Steele? Oh, we're back to Miss Steele now. This actually isn't even a bad line of like, this is fine. That's fine. Good. Good even. I will compliment that. This is the exact kind of place where an inner dialogue can provide a humorous commentary for us to engage with. Please don't let me keep you from anything. I want to know about you. I think that's only fair. His gray eyes are alight with curiosity. Double crap. Where is he going with this? She said double crap. Again, as though that's like a normal thing people say. I've never heard a human being say this in my life. But she said this repeatedly. Double crap. Where's he going with this? He places his elbows on the arms of the chair and steeples his fingers in front of his mouth. His mouth is very distracting. I swallow. There's not much to know, I say, flushing again. What are your plans after you graduate? I shrug, thrown by his interest. Come to Seattle with Kate, find a place, find a job. I haven't really thought beyond my finals. I haven't made any plans, Mr. Gray. I just need to get through my final exams. I would have cut this. Just my own comments here. I would have cut this. We don't need this. She can just respond to things. And 90% of the time that's going to be the case in dialogue. When we're adding this kind of like, we often have this tendency, this temptation to fill in the blanks of character background for the reader with internal thoughts in between lines of dialogue. This is common. This is a thing that a lot of authors do, a lot of writers do. I am an ardent champion I am an ardent bannerman of the cause against this. These should just be cut. We need to cut these. Number one, internal dialogue just isn't very engaging to read. Most people don't want to read other people's thoughts. If they did, they would read more philosophy. Philosophy books don't sell very well. But number two, we can convey this in the dialogue. The dialogue stating, I haven't made any plans, Mr. Gray, I just need to get through my final exams, says all of this. Come to Seattle with Kate, find a place, find a job. Those are normal things we would probably expect her character to have because she's a normal person with human psychology in a city, right? She's going to want to find a job, find a place, etc. We already know that she's in Seattle with Kate. None of this is necessary. None of this is unique. None of this is interesting. None of this characterizes her any more than any other human being on the planet. And number two, I haven't really thought beyond my finals. This line is almost directly said in her dialogue. I just need to get through my final exams. We are just repeating ourselves. Unnecessary. 110% unnecessary. Cut, 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 cut. Which I should be studying for now, rather than sitting in your palatial, swanky, sterile office feeling uncomfortable under your penetrating gate. Penetrating 2 times in a row. Phallic. Penetrating probably just shouldn't be like in your story once, honestly. The word has been so like ruined. There are like 3 words that have been actually like completely ruined by erotica and porn and garbage like this. And they are penetrating, erected, or erection, and ejaculated. And in the sense that ejaculated can mean like said quickly or blurted, you know, like they just like a word vomit. I didn't mean to do that, he ejaculated. You can't use that anymore. That used to be a perfectly descriptive term for a dialogue action. And now it has been ruined. It is gone. It is in word purgatory. Perhaps if it stays there for 40 years and atones for its sins, it will be able to re-emerge into our lexicon and we will be able to engage with it again. But at the moment, it has been tainted. It has a scarlet letter on its chest and it is never to emerge again. For 40 years or so. We run an excellent internship program here, he says quietly. I raise my eyebrows in surprise. Is he offering me a job? Totally fine internal dialogue for a super naive character like this, even though it comes across as a bit heavy-handed, over-explanatory, and kind of annoying. But fine. Kind of fine for a character like this. She is annoying. Oh, I'll bear that in mind, I murmur. Murmur, again. We're doing so much murmuring in this story that I'm surprised that the characters can hear each other because they're just constantly muttering everything that they're saying within each other's proximity. I murmur, completely confounded. Though I'm not sure I'd fit in here. Oh no, I'm musing out loud again. Why do you say that? He cocks his head to one side, intrigued, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. It's obvious, isn't it? I'm uncoordinated, scruffy, and I'm not blonde. What? I don't know why this is a source of her insecurities, that she's not blonde. I don't know why that's like a... Whatever. I guess, okay, blondes, they're all, like, all blonde people are more attractive objectively than non-blonde people. That's just, I guess, what is being communicated by this. I don't make the rules, E.L. James does. Not to me, he murmurs. His gaze is intense, all humor gone, and strange muscles deep in my belly clench suddenly. What the fuck? I tear my eyes away from his scrutiny and stare blindly down at my knotted fingers. What's going on? I have to go. Now. I lean forward to retrieve the recorder. Would you like me to show you around? He asks. I'm sure you're far too busy, Mr. Gray, and I do have a long drive. You're driving back to WSU in Vancouver? He sounds surprised, anxious even. He glances out of the window. It's begun to rain. Well, you better drive carefully. His tone is stern, authoritative. Why should he care? Did you get everything you need? He adds. Okay. Again, all of this dialogue could have been put in one. We don't need this dialogue to be broken up in the way it is. It's unnecessarily slow here, and none of this is important. His tone is stern. His tone has been stern throughout this entire stretch of dialogue. Every single thing he said, his tone has been stern. And she has made that painfully clear to us by saying he said sternly at the end of every single dialogue for him. She then adds authoritative, as though she's trying to spin this, as though this is the more original, like, I've changed the sentence up a bit. Before I told you that his tone was stern, now I'm adding that it is also authoritative, as though we didn't expect that from the billionaire CEO, that he would speak with an authoritative tone. If you have done your characterization correctly, we should know that. That's how a CEO, a billionaire, would talk. Yes, sir, I reply, packing the recorder into my satchel. His eyes narrow speculatively. Thank you for the interview, Mr. Gray. The pleasure's been all mine, he says, polite as ever. As I rise, he stands and holds out a hand. Until we meet again, Miss Steele. And it sounds like a challenge or a threat. I'm not sure which. I frown. When will we ever meet again? I shake his hand once more, astounded that that odd current between us is still there. It must be my nerves. Mr. Gray. I nod at him. Moving with lithe, athletic grace to the door, he opens it wide. Just ensuring you make it through the door, Miss Steele. He gives me a small smile. Obviously, he is referring to my earlier less than elegant entry into his office. Yes, indeed. It was so obvious that we knew that. If the reader is paying attention to the story, you should trust that your reader is paying attention to the story. You should trust that your reader is following the events, that they remember the events that happened literally 6 pages ago. If you can't trust that, you are probably writing either to a kindergarten level audience, a first grade level audience, a second grade level audience, maybe, possibly an ADD third grade level audience, or the wrong audience. And especially in this case, the wrong audience. I flush. That's very considerate, Mr. Gray, I snap, and his smile widens. I'm glad you find me entertaining. I glower inwardly, walking into the foyer. I'm surprised when he follows me out. Andrea and Olivia both look up, equally surprised. Did you have a coat? Gray asks. Yes. Olivia leaps up and retrieves my jacket, which Gray takes from her before she can hand it to me. He holds it up, and, feeling ridiculously self-conscious, I shrug it on. She feels like 6 things. She feels hot for him, she feels self-conscious, she feels astounded, and she feels intimidated. Sorry, and embarrassed. 5 things. She feels 5 things. Actually, self-conscious is kind of like a form of embarrassment. It's like a mild embarrassment. So I'm going to say she just feels anxious, intimidated, hot for corporate, and astounded at all of his amazing views in his skyscraper. This is just so shallow characterization. Her emotions, none of this is human. Humans don't like oscillate between, like they don't become immediately intimidated by things and then immediately astounded. Oh my God, it's so amazing in here. And then they meet the billionaire and they're like, oh my God, you're so sexy. It's intact. If he notices my reaction, he gives nothing away. His long index finger presses the button summoning the elevator, and we stand waiting, awkwardly on my part, coolly self-possessed on his. Of course, because I'm the awkward, nervous little sheep girl, and he is the big, menacing wolf, cool billionaire. So we keep drawing attention to how long his fingers are. It's not subtle. It's annoyingly unsubtle. And it's like, it's not even so over the head that it becomes a parody. It's like it's trying to be cool. It's trying to be smooth. Smooth jazz. The doors open and I hurry in, desperate to escape. I hurry in, desperate to escape. You need a comma there. I hurry in, comma, desperate to escape. Because desperate to escape is the clause modifying how you hurry in. It is an adjective. It's an adverb. It's an adverb phrase, basically. I hurry in, and if we were like sort of fleshing this out in a full sentence, we would say, I hurry in because I'm desperate to escape, right? And you would put a comma there because you would have because I'm desperate to escape. That would be a full sentence. I'm desperate to escape because becoming like the conjunctive clause or whatever there. Comma right here. Otherwise, you get a weird thing with in desperate. I hurry in desperate to escape. I really need to get out of here. When I turn to look at him, he's leaning against the doorway beside the elevator with one hand on the wall. He really is very, very good looking. It's distracting. His burning gray eyes gaze at me. I don't know what this means. I don't know how eyes are burning and gray. Gray is not a color of things that burn. Gray is the color of things that are already burnt. Gray is the color of ash and smoke. It is not the color of things that will burn you. Anastasia, he says as a farewell. Christian, I reply. And mercifully, the doors close. Oh, Lord. How long did it take us to get through one despicable chapter of this? 3 hours. 3 hours. I'm calling it. I am calling it. I am saying officially, this is worse than the Eye of Argon. Because both of them employ sexist bullshit tropes, like absolutely garbage tropes of women, of other people. Both of them treat side characters like completely side characters, treat their women like, I don't know, like they're weird Barbie sex objects on the side to like, but it's not even like, at the very least, in Eye of Argon, it's done with some edge of originality. The weird ways the language is employed at least speaks to an attempt at prose, an attempt to make things be mildly engaging, an attempt to make things be described in creative ways. There were words in the Eye of Argon, granted, horribly misspelled, beyond recognition, but there were words there that belied a vocabulary that extended beyond, I can name things that would be in a corporate building and I can describe different ways, not even different, the same 3 ways that Anastasia would be hot for Christian. This was painful. This was painful. Oh, Lord. Well, we made it through. It's not the end of the world that this was published, but it may be the end of the publishing industry. It is, at the very least... Now, I was going to say it's the end of my faith in the publishing industry, but my faith in the publishing industry ended long ago. Far before the merger of the Random House and the Great Penguin. No, the publishing industry is rapidly hurtling toward Armageddon. Apocalypse. Self-destruction. Okay, well, we have accomplished in secret order what I set out to do today. This stream, and I would like to take the opportunity to thank every single one of people who have followed and who have tuned in and who have dropped in the chat. This stream ever, by the way, this stream is the final one, the final arrow in the quiver, with any luck, before I can make affiliate. And so, I thank you for helping that to happen, for making that happen. I am truly thankful. I'm very excited. I'm excited at the future that will be made possible by the easing of well, essentially, the less financial barriers there are toward my economical use of my free time, the more that I will be able to stream for humans like you. So, if you would like more of this, continue to attend. No, continue to view, to, I don't know, whatever. Continue to Twitch, sitting there behind keyboards and just pressing buttons until things happen and emotes pop up on the screen and fireworks abound. Everyone can jump in jubilee, dance with joy. And we all may know when we wake up tomorrow that the world will be just a slightly better place. No, we can't know that. Okay, who are we going to? We are going to drop into a human stream person. Let's see. We will drop into Raven. Peace and love, family. See you on the flip side, and with any luck, hopefully, next time we stream, tomorrow, maybe, we will be affiliates.